Yep.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting in just a second. For some reason, my calculator is open, and so is Spotify. Please go away. What else is here? That's all fine. Put this on mute. Put my other phone on mute. There we go. Right, I'm ready to go when you are.
Yep, just a second here.
Let us know in the chat if our audio levels are balanced. Hopefully, none of us are overblown or too quiet, because that seems to always be the case.
Testing. Do I sound okay? Or should I be better? Let's see, let's do this here. All right, Zach, you're all set?
Yep.
Zach, do you need to go buy some hair gel?
Yeah.
All right, I am now recording.
I'm now recording.
3, 2, 1, clap. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 327 for October 6th, 2023. Hey everyone, Daniel Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting edition of the Windows Central Podcast. We have a busy one this week with lots of cool stuff. We'll be starting off with my impressions of the $5,000 HP Spectre Fold, which was announced a couple weeks back. It's a 17-inch foldable PC, foldable display that turned into a laptop. I went to New York yesterday, hung out with HP, got a briefing on it, got to ask questions about it, got to come home with it. Oh boy. I don't think they're going to let me keep this one now. I'm going to talk about why I think this thing's a big deal besides that pricing. This is a watershed moment, I think. We'll also go through the Surface Laptop Studio 2 plus Go 3 reviews. Both of those went up this week, and although there doesn't seem to be a ton of interest from people out there due to some of their pricing, we'll just go over our thoughts of them. Windows 12, will it be a subscription-based system? For some reason, this rumor always pops out every time there's a new edition of Windows. Part of me gets it because everything is going subscription based. Actually, related to that, HP announced yesterday a subscription service, two of them. One was for printers.
Oof.
So like they already do a thing where it's subscription for ink. And like so when your HP printer runs low on ink or is getting low, it basically through the internet phones home to HP to your account, orders another one, and you'll get it before your toner is out, which is actually really cool. And now they do it with paper too, which is they can give you paper, which is actually really convenient. Now they're doing a new one where you don't even need to buy the printer. It's like I think $3 a month, and you get the printer and
Wow.
that same service. And then every 2 years you'll get a new printer, which is actually kind of cool when I think about it. So they're rolling that out, and then they're also doing one on for offices that use their Poly hardware, basically the conferencing stuff, all that. They're doing a subscription for that too, which is pretty crazy. So everything is going subscription based. You're not crazy, and you're probably not crazy to ask if Windows 12 is going to do that. So we'll go through that rumor as well. Surface Neo and Duo. It's been 4 years, God, since those were announced 4 years ago. Holy, that seems crazy to me. A lot's happened, obviously, since then. And then if we have time, we'll do thing of the week. There's probably a couple of those that I'll have to think of. But yeah, Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
I'm not too bad. It's been quite an interesting week. We're gearing up for another big deals week next week. It's Amazon Prime Day deals, whatever they're called this time around. So we'll be recommending lots more products for you guys over the next week. But other than that, I'm not too bad. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. Very busy week. Had more travel. I'm exhausted. I need time off. I'm tired of travel.
Yeah.
Oh, and I didn't mention this on the last podcast. It probably should be the thing of the week, but I'll just mention it now. Henry is my thing of the week for last week. Henry is a new puppy, a new dog we
Oh.
adopted because I can't stop myself. Although I need to stop myself. That's now 2 dogs and 3 cats all rescues that we got. He's a 6-month-old. We don't know what he is. He's a combo, looks like of a beagle, a whippet, and maybe a Rottweiler. I don't know. But he's the most docile, passive dog I've ever seen. He's just the sweetest dog. You can just go. He loves being picked up. He loves being held. If you put him in your lap, he just like melts and will just stay there. He's super cute. He is a puppy though, so I had to play my favorite games with him, which is called "What's in Your Mouth Now," which I play a lot of. He likes eating my earplugs, which is not good. So, but Zach was right to talk about this a couple of weeks ago or months ago about dogs, about how they're so dumb they just eat everything. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, he tries to eat literally everything. But he's cute and he gets along very well with our other dog. They're like best friends now, which is awesome. They play together all the time, so that's fun. But anyway, so he's been keeping me up at night. That's what I'm saying. I'm not getting a lot of sleep. Actually, in the morning, I have to get up now every morning, like at 7:30, because that's when he wants to get up. So I'm tired. But anyway, let's get right into the big news. HP Spectre Fold. So this was announced, as I mentioned, a few weeks ago. Kind of came out of nowhere. We didn't even have rumors. We don't get a lot of rumors for HP devices, which is unfortunate. I mean, it's fortunate for them, unfortunate for us.
Yeah.
So if anyone at HP wants to leak to us, by all means. But yeah, we didn't know about this device. Kind of came out of nowhere. I should also mention LG announced a foldable PC. Also came out of nowhere. Also only being sold in South Korea, so who cares? Not that South Korea is an awesome place, but we'll never get our hands on this thing. It's a shame because LG makes these displays, right? So it'd be really interesting to see how they do it. But HP's is on sale right now. You can go buy it. You can get it today. It's at Best Buy. You can order from HP.com. You don't have a lot of choice. There's one version. It's 16 gigs of RAM. I forgot the storage. I think it's a terabyte. And it's a $5,000, $4,999.99. So it is not cheap, that's for sure. But you can go buy it now, and let's get into it. So this is a 17-inch tablet that then folds, and it slaps on a keyboard, and it turns into a 12 and a half inch laptop. But there's way more to that. I will say, so we all know Lenovo's done this first, right? Although we never seen their X116 fold. We don't know what happened with that one. This is night and day. I give credit for Lenovo for getting it out there and trying and experimenting, but this one from HP is on a different level. They have put so much thought into this and just solved so many problems. So we talked about this before, where the Lenovo's take one issue is they have like an origami stand, and they have this for the dual screen device too, right? So in other words, it's like it folds up. The origami stand folds into a cover for the Bluetooth keyboard. So you wrap the keyboard in that, and then you can stick that to the laptop or the fold. For this, I'm talking about their 9-1 Yoga that has the dual screens. And then, of course, the keyboard needs to be charged via USB. Otherwise, it goes dead. But it lasts a long time, so you don't need to charge it often. And so HP solved a lot of this. For one, the keyboard recharges wirelessly. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. With the new Fold, you can't stick the keyboard into between the displays to carry it. It has to go on the outside. So you're carrying the tablet, you're carrying the keyboard, and then you're carrying the like the stand with it and like the pen. So it's like 3 pieces. And my criticism kind of was that it was cool, but it also felt like every time you wanted to use it, you were both assembling and disassembling a computer. Like literally, they just separated its parts, and you're just putting it together, taking it apart. It still worked in the sense like you got a really big display when you needed it, and like a little laptop when you did, but it was a little just more work to it. And what it's called friction in engineering terms, right? You want to reduce friction for the user, basically the amount of stuff they need to do to enjoy it. So HP's keyboard first of all, fits nicely between the two displays, so you can carry it like that. But every time it's connected and it's stuck in that position with the magnets, it's recharging wirelessly. No one's ever done this before. So you don't, it does have a plug. Like you can charge it separately if you want to, but you don't need to. It's always just going to charge while it's on that thing. The pen also sticks to it and also charges wirelessly through the same mechanism. But being able to carry this, just a device with the keyboard in it, makes it a lot nicer. Feels like a book, right? Um, they also don't have like an origami type stand that you need to unfold and fold up to get the stand for it when you want to go into the desktop mode. This literally just has a kickstand built into it. And it's a really nice kickstand. It's a single one. It's not like a Surface kickstand. It's more like a stick one, but it's rubber too and feels really nice. And it's supposed to be very sturdy. It goes through the same rigorous testing as all their hinges on all laptops do. So it should last a long time. But the rubber is cool because it allows you to adjust it to different angles. And because that rubber is going to act as, well, it creates friction itself on the table. So it grips better, right? So it doesn't, if it was just like a plastic or a metal, that could slide, right, on a table. So this allows you to do that. And this actually has three positions, right? So it has a 17-inch, basically it acts as like an all-one PC. You go to a desk, you turn this thing, it's a 17-inch display in front of you. Then you have the wireless keyboard with a touchpad built on, right? And now it's awesome. You're sitting in front of this thing. Then of course you can just stick the keyboard into it, and it turns into a 12.5-inch laptop. But now you can also slide, as we've seen before in other devices, and Microsoft was doing this too with the Neo. You can slide the keyboard towards yourself, and the magnets will kind of disengage, and as you're sliding it, will re-engage to a new position. They call this a 1.5 mode. So on Lenovo, they would put like widgets down there or do something, and that's what Microsoft did too with the Neo. Mm-hmm. This doesn't do that. It actually it's just the full display, just bigger now. But they've worked with Microsoft to create their own kind of snapping system on top of the existing Windows Snap, and you can snap windows down there. So it acts almost like a different type of display.
Oh, wow.
So you could, so you can keep your like Microsoft Word in your main display, and you can fit up to 2 windows down there and snap them there. And so you'd always have access to it. Maybe you're watching a video or something like that, right? Or audio or doing something. You can just kind of keep those down there with your main thing. And so they're calling that like a 1.5 mode, and it gives you basically a 14-inch view.
Would you say it's quite similar to the Asus ZenBook Duo, which has that sort of keyboard deck screen above the keyboard?
Yeah. And so, because what they point out, they're like 12.5-inch laptop is the most convenient for carrying for this form factor, but 14-inch is the best-selling laptop size. So this gives you that. And this was what was cool. They actually showed us, they did have a dual screen prototype. They prototyped dual screen and this one, and they tried all these different sizes. And this is the one that they said is the best because you can get the 17-inch display when you want to do like a full all-in-one type of experience. But the 12.5, it's good enough where it's a full-size keyboard. You don't feel cramped and you have a nice thing. But then you can go to like kind of 14-inch mode and do even more with it. Now, the difference between all of these is the fact that this thing is thin. Actually, I should bring up the measurements here. Let's see. Yeah, fill in the, let's see.
Actually, I think I remember it. So something that's like 8 millimeters thin. It's very close to the Surface Neo's thinness. It's not exact. I think the Surface Neo was a couple of millimeters thinner than that. But the Surface Neo was an entirely different beast. And since that didn't have a foldable screen, they were able to get away with it being that thin at that time. Remember, the Duo and the Neo were the thinnest, air quotes, foldables of their time because they were using non-foldable screens. But with HP being able to get to what it is, which, have you found it?
Yes, it is 8.5 millimeters thin when it's completely opened as a display.
That's really great.
That is, it's very thin. Where everything else, the Lenovo's and the Asus one, it was significantly thicker. And when it's folded, it's 21.4 millimeters. So it's thicker because they keep a gap in between so you can fit the keyboard in there. It weighs 2.99 pounds, just the display. But it also weighs 3.6 pounds with the keyboard
Have you got
carrying
it there?
around
Can
with
you
it.
show
So
it on camera?
yeah, so it's not light, but it's super dense feeling,
Oh, when it's
and
closed, it
it's
just
very
looks like
compact.
a normal laptop. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's technically has a smaller footprint than the Surface Laptop Go.
Wow. So it's
Obviously,
very,
it weighs more
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
thicker,
Hmm.
but it feels like a solid book. Like it feels dense and just like I said, solid. Um, it feels amazing.
What are
There's like no
the,
flex to it
yeah,
or anything.
what are the specs again?
So yeah, let's go through those specs. So they're kind of interesting. It's a 3x4, 17-inch, 2.5K. That's
Nice.
2560 by 1920, foldable OLED, touch and stylus support, 4 to 500 nits max brightness, VESA True Black HDR 500, 99.5 DCI-P3, IMAX enhanced certified. So this is doesn't have Dolby Vision, has IMAX enhanced, which is also includes DTS audio tuning. And basically, if you go to like Disney Plus and you watch, if you don't know on Disney Plus, they've been experimenting with IMAX. They've been shooting some of their movies in IMAX for like the Marvel stuff, and then Oppenheimer was that like that too. And Disney Plus is actually showing that content in IMAX like version, so it's a taller aspect ratio. So you won't have the black bars if you're watching like a 16 by 9. Uh, this fits that aspect ratio and it matches all the requirements they have for um, that one. So that's the display. It's a gorgeous display. Does it have a crease? Not really.
Mm.
And I'll get pictures of this over the weekend and post them. But like, this doesn't really have an air gap between the where the fold is, and they did that because there's a metal plate below it to give it resilience, and the metal plate's edges basically go right up. So the metal plates touch each other basically when it closes, but the tolerance is between the hinge and these plates is like 3 millimeters. It's like extremely hard to get it right. Whereas Lenovo's and everybody else had like the metal plates didn't go far enough, and so when you would open it flat, there was basically like an air gap they called it between, and that's what kind of created that crease that you would see. Theirs doesn't really have a crease. It's very, very subtle. Now, for the processor, it's interesting. It's an Intel Core i7 1250U. That's 12th gen. You'd be like, oh, come on, 13th gen's out, and 14 is going to be coming around the corner. True. Um, this was obviously in research and design for a long time, but the reason why it's 12th gen is because they wanted this specific processor. It's actually a 9-watt Core i7. And they did that for heat and thermal reasons, as well as probably battery life. Why not use 13th gen? Good question. To answer, there is no version of this chip in the 13th gen range right now. There's just no option. So they wanted this chip with 9 watt. They had to use 12th gen. Not a big deal. It still has all the multi cores and all that kind of stuff. It feels zippy enough to me. Feels like an ultrabook. It doesn't feel like it's lagging. Once you go to 12th gen, and we'll talk about that with Laptop Go 3 because I think it's a big deal too. Once you hit 12th gen and 13th gen, like it's a different experience with Windows. It's just a much
Yeah.
better performance. Um, Intel Iris Xe for graphics, 16 gigs of LPDDR5 RAM, 1 TB PCIe 4 storage. You only have 2 ports, both USB Type-C, Thunderbolt 4 with power delivery. Check this out. So I mentioned the weight with the keyboard, right? 3.6 pounds, which is 1.624 kilograms, or just the tablet is 2.99 pounds, 1.35 kilograms. So not light, but not super heavy, right? Now, I mean, find me a 17-inch laptop or PC that weighs that,
Right.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, that said, they squeezed in I believe it's a 93, well, they have 94.3 watt hour battery.
Wow.
That's huge. That's a huge battery. There's actually 2 batteries, one in each half, and it's perfectly balanced. Although Windows sees it only as a single battery,
You
which is
know
kind of
why?
cool.
You
So
know
it's
why
not like
that's
Surface.
possible? It's because there's no physical keyboard, right? It's just since it's all
Right.
screen, you actually save space internally. I'm sure.
Yeah. So, but to put that in perspective, so a lot of like the Surface Laptop Studio too has a 53 or 54 watt hour battery, and that's a lot of ultrabooks. Your thin and lights and all those are around the high 40s,
Right.
maybe low 60s, but it's really right in between there for watt hours. When you go up to the XPS 15, which is a no joke workstation kind of laptop, now you're getting into the 90s. They used to do 99 watt hour. Now it's like 94 watt hour. 99 watt hour, you can't do more than that and travel with that device on an airplane. So
Right.
that's why they don't go over 99. But the fact that fit in that big of a battery to me is insane. And they use some kind of new, I think, technology for that. Uh, yeah, so and it costs $5,000. So, so why, you may be saying like no one's going to buy that for $5,000. I disagree, but I get the point, which is it's not going to be a mass market device, and that's 100% true. They are under no illusions that it's going to be a mass market device. I don't think they're planning on mass advertising this either. That said, it is in Best Buy. I think they're doing that because it's basically free advertising in a lot of ways. You could literally just go to Best Buy and check this thing out. Where if it was just online only, first of all, a lot of people probably wouldn't buy it just online only. They would probably want to see it in person. Um, so the reason why they even put this out there at that price tag, well, it's super expensive because the display they're using, made by LG, is very low production, right? They don't make a lot of these. It's all custom and stuff like that. So it drives up the price. This is the same issue with Surface devices. All Surfaces have custom displays, which is what ramps up their price. Like you'll never find the Surface display used by another OEM. It doesn't, they may try to copy it, but it's not the same, right? The same thing here. They said, and I've said this for years, as this category grows and these displays become more mass produced, it will reduce the cost. And I've used the example before with the first 4K TV that was on the market was $20,000, and is now you can get them for like a couple $100, right? So this stuff will trickle down. So don't be upset about the price. It's for early people. But the reason why they want this even out there, and I love this explanation. They just said, he who learns the fastest wins. And what they mean by that is learning is they want to get this out there because they want feedback on it so they can improve upon it. And the reason why for that is because they really, really, really believe this is the next generation form factor. They're really convinced of it. They're investing in it. They're saying this is not a one-off for them. But they want to get it out there because they want to make it better. Because the company that gets there first and does the best version first gets into that market early, sets the standard, kind of becomes the de facto one for this. And in my opinion, after using this for a little while, they've done it. This thing is I tried the Lenovo stuff, and I didn't even get to review the dual screen one, which I kind of want to. But the dual screen one does have a lot of issues. For instance, it doesn't have a real trackpad or touchpad, right? It's the display becomes a touchpad. This one has a full keyboard, not backlit, but it does have a regular clickable touchpad on it, which is nice. Oh, I didn't mention too, when you go to that 1.5 mode and you pull that keyboard down, the area where your palm rests and where the touchpad is, it's like a flap, and it goes down. So now it acts like a ramp for your palms. It's basically almost like a built-in palm rest. So it's really good. You can use it in your lap like that too, but you can use it in your lap or at a desk. And so it gives you a little bit more space for your hands and more comfortable angled typing. Because we all know on laptops, you don't have that. You have to rest it maybe on the corners of the device. And sometimes it doesn't feel good. This gives you like basically a wrist rest or a palm rest. And it feels really, really ergonomic and really cool. That's another thing they did. But when you combine all this stuff, one using it as a 12.5 inch is fine because it's still a beautiful OLED display. Like it looks really, really nice. But what's kind of cool that they did that Lenovo didn't, and this may sound stupid, like how did Lenovo not do that? On Lenovo's, when you have the keyboard stuck on through magnets, it's sticking to the device, the display below it is technically still on. Which means, and I've had this happen, you could lose track of a window. It could open up below your keyboard and you wouldn't know. It'd be like, where are my windows with?
That sort of thing is what happens when Microsoft doesn't invest in making Windows a native OS for foldables. That's the result of OEMs being forced to sort of manhandle Windows or strong arm Windows into doing what it's supposed to do on these new form factors. We saw the same stuff with Lenovo's first foldable, and we've seen it as well with the dual screen one as well. Reviewers always say, the software can get confused sometimes. It's not always a smooth experience rotating between all the different postures, and that's because these OEMs are building their own software on top of Windows to force it into these different postures, and that's because Microsoft, at least up until this point, hasn't done anything really to support these new form factor devices natively within the Windows shell. I hope they do. They've got to be thinking about it at this point, right? Because
Yeah.
a year or so ago, it was really only Lenovo. Maybe Asus was the only other OEM that had foldable Windows PCs. But now we've got HP. LG just announced a foldable as well. And by the sounds of things, HP truly believes in this and are planning to do more of them in the future. I'm sure Lenovo are hopefully thinking about the same. Has Lenovo released its foldable 17-inch yet? They announced that like a year ago
We don't
now.
know. It's 16 inches,
16
16
inch,
inch.
and they've still not rolled it out. So that's concerning, I think.
Yeah, but so HP solved that problem. Basically, when you have the keyboard slapped on, either either in either position, because there's two now, uh, the display below it is turned off to obviously save battery slash you're not going to lose a window below it. So it's like smart stuff like that. But this is the first foldable that I'm like, I could use this regularly. Like I want to use it regularly. Because the size is great. Like I don't mind carrying this thing around. Using it as a normal laptop. And that was a cool thing. Using it in the laptop mode, they're like, that's the first thing we got to get right.
Yeah.
You're like, most people are going to use this thing most of the time in laptop mode, and it has to be a good experience. And they did. They nailed it. It feels like a Surface Laptop Go, just with a way better hardware, right? It's got Windows Hello, facial recognition. It has depth tracking, so you can do the presence detection where you walk away, it locks and unlocks. It does all that kind of stuff. Has a 5 megapixel front-facing camera. It's really good. It's got really good mics. And it's a better resolution, it's better OLED, all this. So I use it as a normal laptop. I was like, yes, I could totally. The keyboard is awesome. I've always loved HP's keyboards, but it is a good typing experience. The touchpad is good. So just using it as a laptop feels good. Like I'm like, yes, I can use this as a laptop and be happy with it. And that's the important thing. And then when you slide that keyboard down and it drops and it gives you the wrist rest, it gives you a little bit more space, a little bit of larger screen. And that could be improved. I think that the way they use that screen and the snapping and stuff like that, but it's just kind of a cool option to have and just feels really nice and ergonomic. Now they do the snapping thing, but I haven't figured out the snapping thing. What happens is that when you drag a window to the top of your screen in Windows 11, it gives you the snapping, that window pops down. You'll have the normal choices from Windows, and then below it are 3 more choices from HP. And you just use those. But for some reason, when you hover your mouse over the large button on a window, that also brings down the snap menu. It doesn't bring down their menu though, and I don't know why that is. So some of that stuff can be improved a little bit. But then then when you take it someplace, and of course you could just pop open that kickstand and plop it down, and now it's a beautiful 17-inch OLED display at 2.5K in front of you, and you have the keyboard's Bluetooth, and you're just like, you can now, it's basically like an all-in-one. And the audio is really good on it. They have 4 speakers, Tune, B&O, what was it? I forgot the company, but their typical speaker range that they use, and they're DTS audio certified. So the audio is good, the camera is really good, typing is really good. It does have a fan. I've only heard it once, and that's when I reset the PC. You know how that is reinstalling Windows.
Yeah.
But even that, it wasn't loud. But normal usage, you won't hear the fan. It does have like little vents on the side, but you don't hear it. They placed the USB ports, so when you're in laptop mode, you have access to one on one side, and when you go into your all-in-one mode, it rotates. You'll have it on the other side. Like it's all thought out well. The speakers balance each other out regardless of what position you're in. The camera will now be on the side in your all-in-one position, but the camera rotates the image and auto adjusts and can frame you and all that stuff, so you won't even notice the difference. And you may be wondering about battery life now, because I mentioned it has a huge battery, but it also has a huge OLED display. I don't have numbers right now. I can tell you though, in using it, it is way better than I thought it would be. And they threw out some numbers that were pretty positive, but this doesn't like feel like it's draining fast. Like it kind of feels like a normal laptop to me, where I'm just like, oh no, okay, battery life's pretty solid on this thing. And I'm pretty confident the battery's going to last a decent amount of time, but we'll get more figures on it. It does come with a 110-watt charger, which is interesting. I don't know why it's 110. They do have a USB-A port on that though, which is cool, kind of like what Surface does. So when you plug that in, you now have a way to plug in a Type A accessory. And I imagine the extra wattage, that extra 110, some of that will go to that, so you can probably do charging and stuff like that. Um, but the hardware, it's super thin. Uh, Everything just feels good on it. Like they just, like I said, thought out every little nuance, and they explained to us, like I said, how they tested different sizes and why they did this and made these decisions. I feel like this is going to be the first foldable PC that, like people, it's like kind of a watershed moment, as I said. I think this is the one that people are going to be like, set the standard for what this stuff can be. I think they got most of this right. And everybody that was in that room, I can tell you, was pretty impressed with all the things. And they answered so many questions. They showed us the inside and how the hinges, by the way, the hinges, as I mentioned, the hinges for the display itself go through the same testing as all of their laptops. It's like 25,000 folds or something like that. It's the same. So they said the hinges are going to last as long as the device. Um, Now you may be wondering about the display. They said the display is rated higher than their hinges to how long it's supposed to last, which is pretty interesting. Um, but there's just no friction to this device. It's exactly what you expect it to be. You open the lid, it's a laptop. If you take the keyboard off and throw the kickstand out, it just rotates. Now you're an all-in-one. Like it takes seconds to do. And yeah, when I go to like a hotel and I'm traveling, sitting in front of a 17-inch window, display, being able to snap stuff around and everything like that, I think is going to be a really such a good experience. So, you have any questions about it, Zach?
I don't really. I think you answered all the good questions there. I'm very curious about this device. I'm obviously not going to spend $5,000 on it. I will probably
Right.
wait for them to come down in price. I am curious. So HP must be targeting the enthusiasts, right? I can't imagine they've got businesses in mind for this, or I'm sure some might invest, but
Yeah, so it's under their Spectre brand, not
right,
EliteBook brand or
right.
Dragonfly brand. So the Dragonfly and Elite are their business ones. Spectre is their premium consumer. As we did ask about target market, I don't know if they have a specific one in mind. I joked
I'm
around
glad.
it's
I'm
30
glad
old.
they don't, because it's nice for
Yeah,
companies to just build stuff because they want to build it.
yeah, yeah. My joke was that it's built for white guys in their 30s.
Yeah.
Because if you're in your 30s, you're a guy, you have a little bit more disposable income. I just say white guys because a lot of white guys aren't in tech. But it's obviously more than that, but yeah, it's for anyone who's an enthusiast who has money to spend. There are these people,
Yeah.
there. It's not all of us, that's for sure. But yeah, I don't know if I would drop 5,000 on it. But if you told me how to use this thing, I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm going to use this
Right.
thing. Because I just think it's super cool. The only thing it doesn't have, I was surprised. I'm not that surprised. It doesn't have 5G. If they had 5G, it would be
Yeah.
perfect. But they didn't put that in there. Now, I'm not surprised because one, that'd be another SKU. It'd bump the price higher. And I don't know if they could have squeezed that tech in there, right? You have to make more
Yeah.
room for that. But
I think
maybe the next version.
yeah, I think HP might be my favorite OEM right now. They're the ones.
I agree.
They're them and Lenovo. That they're the ones pushing this sort of experimental stuff now, which Surface used to do. Right, Surface for a long time was
Yeah.
the experimental PC hardware brand, and they've sort of stepped back a bit, and they're now doing sensible stuff more so than anything else. Whereas we've got HP here with a $5,000 foldable PC, and we've got Lenovo coming out of a dual screen one, and I love it. I think it's great to see. I'm very excited to see where this goes from HP and Lenovo.
So I was joking that Dan's racist. Cancel him quick. Look, and the joke was, I was in a room. It was all white guys. Just
Oh,
saying.
for goodness
Um,
sake.
that's the industry, right? We joke about it. That's why, like, when I go to events, my girlfriend is like, "Oh, did you meet any girls?" I'm like, "No, I never meet any girls on my trips. It's all guys. It sucks." I should have gone into fashion. I would have been killing it there with the ladies. But this is, I think, like I said, I know a lot of you won't be able to get your hands on it. Or if you go to Best Buy, I recommend you go and see if it's on display and check it out. But this is the first one I feel like they really got a lot right. And I agree. I think HP is my top company. Lenovo second. Dell's up there, of course, and Razer. They're all really good companies to work with, and they're all doing cool stuff. Lenovo does really great things. I just think that HP sometimes are a little bit more refined in what they do. And I'm also just biased because although ThinkPads are cool, we both don't like the track point system, and HPs don't have that. So, but yeah, HP laptops. Even Rich Woods, the editor-in-chief over at XDA, him and I always joke around about that. Like the Spectre series is great, that's their premium one, but we both prefer their Envy line, which is a step below it. Just because the Envies are like always a silver chassis and they're very clean and minimalist. There's no like frills to
Yeah.
them, but they just look really cool. So look for the review for that. The big questions will be, of course, to answer will be battery life and performance. I wish, this is where I think, 14th gen Intel was going to really shine, Meteor Lake, because Meteor Lake is small and it's supposed to be very battery efficient. Um, but they didn't have time. Obviously, Meteor Lake isn't out. This has been in R&D for a long time. You can't just swap out components like that. You have to redesign everything, but I'm sure they will. Um, and so I think the performance is going to be fine, but it's also one of those, it could always be better, especially if you're going to turn to like a 17-inch all-in-one, you're going to probably want a little bit more horsepower, and this probably doesn't do it yet. But for day-to-day productivity stuff, it's totally fine. It doesn't feel slow at all to me. Um, yeah, and then the display, how accurate it is, and all that kind of stuff. But they're saying it's 99.5% DCI-P3. If you don't know, DCI-P3 is like that's the professional color grading you use for the color gamut for like photography and video. It's most displays don't hit that. A lot of the OLEDs do though. Like Surface doesn't hit that. They hit 99% sRGB, but that's easier to do. Um, so I mean, this is a quality display. Like the fact that it has IMAX certified. There's literally a sticker on the bottom that says IMAX. I've never seen that before. Um, yeah, but it's cool. Oh, no headphone jack though. So, oh
Oh,
no.
cancelled.
Yeah, let me make sure. There's no headphone jack. Yeah, it's got volume
Cancelling my order.
rockers. It does have a privacy cam. You can hit the little switch to turn off the webcam, so that's kind of cool. But that's that. We'll have more on that real soon, though. But mark my words, I think this is that's the first foldable PC with a foldable display that I think is going to really make a big impact, at least in terms of the market and setting standards. I don't think it's going to be a mass seller, neither does HP. But if you have $5,000, I think it'll be money well spent. Speaking of reviews, let's go on to Surface Laptop Studio 2 and the Go 3. We'll start with the Laptop Studio 2, one of my favorite devices. This one got reviews were all kind of all over the place a little bit.
Yeah.
Verge ripped it apart. PC Mag, I think it was, gave it a really good score. XDA gave it a really score. We gave it a really good score. I got to write an editorial about this because this is what pisses me off. Everybody talks about the price and it's expensive, and they're like, "Oh, with a MacBook, you can, I get comparing it to a MacBook in terms of performance, totally fair, because you're going to use it like a laptop and you want that. It doesn't make sense though just to compare it to that, and I'll tell you why. The Laptop Studio 2 is something that really no other PC does, which is it's a very powerful laptop that turns into a very powerful digital easel, um, which is critical for, I would say, engineers, architects, designers, artists, people doing photography and video editing, creators. That's the demographic. If you're like, should I get a MacBook or should I get the Surface Laptop Studio 2? If that's a question in your head, or like a Dell XPS 15, you really are thinking about this wrong. I'll tell you, you don't need the Laptop Studio 2 then. Um,
Right.
you need the laptop. If you're not going to use the pen or bring down that display to lay it flat and you use it like that as a professional, you do not need the Laptop Studio 2. Now, if you still want it and you have the money, it's a great laptop. I don't need the Laptop Studio 2. I didn't need the first one either. Did I love using it every day? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's one of my favorite laptops. But that was a loaner unit from Microsoft, right? If I went to go buy one, I wouldn't have done that. So my issue here is if you really want to make it fair, you would compare it to buying a MacBook Pro 14-inch, which starts at $2,000. The specs don't compare, right? You're only going to get half the RAM, half the storage. It goes up to $3,200 if you're going to match the one that I tested. But then you also got to throw it in iPad Pro, a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which starts at $1,100. Like, that's a fair comparison because now those two devices can do what the Surface Laptop Studio does.
Right.
But now your pricing is way higher. You're going to get way higher very quickly, especially if you want to match it for spec to spec, right? Um, and storage, if you want to do that, you're going to end up more money that way. Plus, it's going to be at least 5 pounds versus 4.3 pounds. Now you're carrying two devices around, which I can tell you, not nearly as convenient as having one. You got to charge two devices. That's the fair comparison. Anybody else who tells you, and even like, I didn't even put that in our review section. I probably should have, but I'll turn that to like an editorial thing because I thought it was, in some ways, it's kind of obvious, but that's the fair comparison.
The the issue I have real quick with comparing with the MacBook is that it assumes users are just able to
Right.
use both operating systems, which isn't true at all.
Yeah.
Lots of people have a preference. If you're looking at the Surface Laptop Studio, it's likely because you're a Windows user and you have no interest in Mac OS. So the MacBook Pro, regardless of how good or bad it is irrelevant. It might as well not exist. Like, that's how I look at it. Whereas, if you've read any reviews that compare it to a MacBook Pro, it's most likely because the reviewer is a MacBook user at the end of the day. When they're done with their laptop, they close the Laptop Studio 2 and they turn to their MacBook Pro, which is what they use day to day, and they go back to using that. PC users probably didn't even think about the MacBook Pro, right? Like, if I'm looking at a Laptop Studio 2, I'm comparing it to other Windows PCs. That's my comparison. What Windows PC matches this Windows PC the closest? I don't consider Mac OS at all because I'm not a Mac OS user. I don't want Mac OS. So that comparison to the MacBook Pro really only makes sense for a very small selection of people, those being people who, A, are able to use both operating systems and don't have a preference, and B, for some reason looking at a device that can turn into an easel for artists and creatives, or a laptop. That's a very small percentage of people.
Yeah, and this is meant for a niche market. And there's nothing wrong with that. All these companies we just talk about make niche laptops. You just don't hear about a lot of them, and we don't cover a lot of them. But I can tell you, like, Lenovo has $5,000 workstations that are pretty thick and have like insane hardware, and it's all certified to run certain software. And you need that certification because the error rate between what the GPUs can do and what's tolerable with the software has to match. And that's why they go through a certification process. NVIDIA has this as well with their Studio certification program. Does a consumer need that? Absolutely not. And so, but no one goes after like Lenovo or Dell or any of these companies for these types of devices because no one really covers them as sort of a consumer choice anyway. But it's the same thing. They're very niche devices, but they sell very well. I'm not saying Laptop Studio sells very well, but you have to think about it as a niche kind of market. It's just meant for, I would say non-businessy people who are creators, who do engineering, who do architecture. But if you're, like I said, if you're not going to use that feature of this device, go get something else. There's a lot of other laptops out there. Go get an XPS 15. Go get an HP Spectre X360 16-inch, which is a really nice laptop too. That's fine. But so let's go to the performance part. They said this is twice as powerful as the original. 100% true. This thing it's very powerful. Now we test it, as we mentioned all the time in our benchmarks. We test that max performance plugged in because that's how most people are going to use it. Most people aren't going to use a laptop on max performance in their lap. I never do. But it's not, if I need it in a pinch, I will, right? If I need that horsepower. But a lot of times I'm going to use recommended on my lap. And then when I plug in, I'm going to use the max performance, and that's what we test under. There's been some reports that when you're using it under recommended, it's not nearly as fast. I didn't have any issues with it, but I understand that they throttle it back a little bit to save on battery power, but that's exactly what I expect.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to benchmark at max performance because you want to know what it's capable of. There's no point benching it recommended because that's not what it's capable of. That's just it being efficient enough to last a long time or longer than if it was on max performance. Battery life isn't great, right?
Yeah, so the battery life did take a hit.
Right.
And that's not surprising because it has much beefier hardware. We're talking RTX 4060, 1 terabyte storage, 64 gigs of RAM, and has a new 13th gen Intel chip. So battery life is worse, but not out of the ordinary. When I mentioned the Spectre X360 16-inch from 2022. Had a 4K OLED display, also convertible, also got about the same battery life. So it's not unusual. Like when you get to the size of laptop and this kind of power, it's not unusual to, you know, I don't know. I'm going to say 6 hours maybe you'll get out of this thing. Um,
That might
maybe
be a bit
7, depending on how
longer
you're
if
using it.
you opt for the entry level models without the dedicated graphics card, but
Yes.
I don't think you'll get much more.
And don't forget, it's set by default to 120 hertz for the display.
Right.
That uses battery, but you can set it to the dynamic. Will switch between 60 and 120 based on the content, or you can just set it to 60, and that'll save you battery life too. So battery life isn't amazing, but again, I don't see, and maybe I'm being an apologist here. Don't get me wrong. I say all the time, battery life can be better in every single device, even the MacBooks. Oh, they get 12 hours of battery life. Why not 18? Yeah. Oh, I only have to charge it every 2 days. Lame. Why don't you have to charge it once a week?
Right.
Like it could always be better. So I get that argument, and I wouldn't say no to better battery life. The problem here is they use the same battery as the
Right.
older model, but the hardware is just
Oh, is it the
thirstier
same
now.
size cell on the inside?
Yes, exact
Wow.
same.
Because it's a thicker chassis, but not a bigger battery.
It's a thicker chassis
Yeah.
because of the heat dissipation. They
Right.
needed
Yeah.
basically to redo the thermals, which I think they did a really good job on thermals. People are saying it got hot. Like
Well, yeah.
I did like you can go look at my FLIR thermal image cameras under load, where under load means I ran I think it was Time Spy by 3D Mark, which pushes the GPU and CPU at the same time really heavily. It's like a video game thing, and it loops 20 times.
Hmm.
So towards the end of that 20, I point a FLIR camera at it and measure the heat from the top keyboards and all that kind of stuff. It never really got over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So I don't
That's
know what they mean
cooler
by
than an
hot.
iPhone 15 Pro Max.
Yeah, right. But like I've seen laptops go up to like 140 degrees at the bottom,
Right.
for gaming laptops. This is nowhere near that. So I don't get what people were complaining about it's hot, and I have the data to prove it. So
Well, so
go look at
computers
my
get
thermal
hot.
images.
There's this media fascination right now, especially again with the iPhone and with Pixel and I guess the Surface here. Devices get hot. They're powerful. They're very thin. They get hot. That's just what happens now.
Yeah,
The chips are getting so good. They're getting so capable. They do run hotter than what they used to. So that's just what we're seeing. I don't know why people are complaining. It's not like they're going to explode. These aren't Samsung devices. I'm kidding. But you get the idea. They're hot. They run hot.
yeah, but under normal load, when just
Yeah,
using
it's
it
fine.
daily, it's fine.
Yeah.
You're not going to you don't won't even hear the fans, which is amazing. The And that's kind of really about it, right? They didn't really change much about it. It is thicker. So it's thicker and heavier. And I'll be honest, that was the first thing I noticed. And they changed the chassis from magnesium, aluminum to just aluminum. And I didn't know that when I pulled it out of the box. I'm like, oh, this feels and looks different. And then I had the meeting right after, and they're like, oh yeah, it's now aluminum. It's fine. I like aluminum. It's nice, but I kind of like the magnesium. The magnesium had a texture to it,
Mm.
and just it was a little bit grayer, just looked kind of cool. The reason they went to aluminum is it's more resilient. That I do believe. I believe the aluminum will hold up better. Now my magnesium was fine, but I could see how it could damage probably easier. But they also made it thicker and heavier. It's like instead of 4 pounds, it's 4.3 pounds. I forgot the how thick it is, but I noticed it because and I write this in my review. And this is important why I like my review and why people should read it. I write it from the perspective of someone who liked and enjoyed the Surface Laptop Studio.
Hmm.
Um, that's where I'm coming from. That doesn't mean it's the last word on it. It just means like you want that if you're going to buy a product, this is how you buy products. You want to read a review from someone who maybe liked the previous generation or likes the product, right? Like I would, if I was going to buy a MacBook, I would want to read someone who's an expert at MacBooks who uses every single one and uses one daily, what they have to say about the brand new one, because they're going to know, right? What it should be like and what it is and what's worse, what's different. They're going to have more detail than a PC user would, a Windows user, right? But then you also want to go read someone who is a detractor. That would be The Verge. I can tell you right now that I know The Verge, right? I'm pretty sure it doesn't. A lot of the times they use Macs. So, but you want to read that. You want to know that perspective. Okay, this is someone who's coming from a Mac and what they think of this device. That's important because sometimes you get that device, you're like, yeah, this would get me to switch. No, this thing is still terrible. And from that, you distill what should be your opinion of this device. That's why I always put in my reviews where I'm coming from. So you know my bias. This idea that reviewers aren't biased is nonsense. The fact that like reviewers don't disclose that they're going to review a Windows PC, but as soon as that review is done, they're going right back to their MacBook is egregious. I mean, it's terrible because it floats this idea that like, I don't know, that if they're not using the brand or product or operating system day to day, it's not that their word doesn't matter, because it certainly does. It just means it gives a different impression than someone who's like a regular Windows user. It's just like if I try not to review gaming laptops. Why?
Right.
I'm not a gamer. I'm just not a hardcore gamer. So it's a lot difficult for me to address all the concerns gamers will have in a laptop review. So I could fake it and play some games on there. And I've done that before. I've done the benchmarks and stuff like that. But if you're going to want to buy a gaming laptop, you would want to get the opinion of someone who's a gamer, right? And if you're going to review a workstation for architects, you're going to preferably want someone who's an architect who's going to talk about, who's a professional. Same with business laptops. I can tell you right now, a lot of companies hate how these tech brands review business laptops, because these people, a lot of the consumer websites, have no idea about the business world. They just do not understand anything about it, but they write as if they do. And that's how they reviewed a laptop. And I can tell you, a lot of these companies get really upset. They try to go out of their way to educate people, but a lot of them, these sites just do not understand what a business laptop is, how it's for, the dynamics financially, and what is required. They'd be like, oh, it's only got a full HD display. Yeah, you're buying like 1,000 of them. You know, sorry, and you're an entry level worker. You're not going to get a 4K OLED on a device that's supposed to last you 3 to 4 years, right? So I think all this stuff is important when talking about reviews. So go read my review and take it for what it is, as someone who's a fan of the Surface Laptop Studio. That said, I gave the same criticism as literally every other review did. The battery life could be better. It still is expensive, although, as I said here, technically, if you're going to compare it to everything else, you got to compare it to something that could be a 2-in-1 PC that would be the HP X360 16-inch I mentioned. That's a competitor to this. A MacBook is not a competitor. Dell XPS 15 technically is in terms of the hardware, except for the fact that the XPS 15 doesn't do inking. So It's like, that's the main thing that this device is for.
There's a great review actually from I can't remember his name now. He's an artist and he reviews PCs and devices.
Right. Yeah.
Brad Wardle, I think it is. Let me find it out. He's done an excellent review of the Surface.
Yeah, there's been
too. Yeah, Brad.
And even I take.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, Brad. Oh no, I was going to say that's like a fault of mine too. Like, I can't review these devices on an artistic level, like as someone who uses a pen professionally, because I don't do that. But there have been a lot of Surface reviews from professional artists who do draw for a living. Like, there's one who is a comic drawer, and like he uses it. Like, his opinion on the pen is going to be way better and more nuanced than mine, and you should definitely go read that, take that consideration. So
yeah, his name's Brad Colbow, Colbow. He reviewed the original and he's reviewed the new one just yesterday. He is someone to listen to if you are an artist and you do intend to use the device with the pen to draw, because that's him. That's what he does. He uses iPads. He uses all sorts of Windows PCs that take ink, and so his opinion on how well this device behaves as an artist's laptop is probably worth your time more than, I guess, any other tech sites review combined, I would say.
Yeah. These are all good points. So I like it. I think what they could have been better, could it be cheaper? Sure. Could battery life be better? Yeah, absolutely.
I was also a user of the original Surface Laptop Studio, and I was taken aback by how thick and heavy that was. So the fact that it's even thicker and heavier this time around, that's wild.
Yeah, Leo, let me return to that. So as someone who's a fan of the original one, I don't like how it's thicker and heavier.
Yeah.
Because the first one, to me, I disagree a little bit. The first one to me felt ergonomically perfect in terms of size. When I carried that thing around, I felt like, it's got a discrete GPU. Yeah, it's going to be heavier than like a Surface laptop and thicker. Like, that's just the nature of it. But it was still thin to me. Now, this definitely feels thicker and heavier. It feels more of machine. It's the same way as an XPS 15. So it's not absurdly heavy. It's actually right in range of that class of device. The XPS 15 has a bigger display. Sure, XPS 15 also doesn't have a hinge and a foldable display with pen and inking, right? That adds weight to this thing. But I didn't care for that. So it does feel a little bit bulkier to me. But I would still, if I needed this device, I would still carry it around with me. But the key, so, and I also mentioned in the review, one thing, and this is something that Surfaces always do, and I think people gloss over this, is it gets the fundamentals right. And this is anytime you're going to buy a laptop, this is what matters. Is the display good? Yeah, it's good. Could it be better? Yeah, it could be a little bit more color accurate. I wish it was anti-reflective, right? But it's a really good display. It's bright, it's punchy. It does HDR now. HDR 400 looks really nice when you enable it. Great display. Good front-facing camera. Yep, not the best, but it's up there. And then now it does the AI stuff and it zooms in and all that kind of stuff, which is kind of cool. Is the keyboard good? Yeah, one of the best. Touchpad good? Yep, one of the best. Audio good? Yep, some of the best. Though that's what you do with a laptop. And now does it have more ports? Yes, and that was a limiting factor in the first one. It only had two Type C's. Now it's got two Type C's with Thunderbolt, a Type A, and a micro SD. So you have much more flexibility there. But when you get a laptop, the thing you're going to use is the keyboard, the touchpad, the display, and the audio, and sometimes the camera. Those are the fundamentals. Everything else is opinion and can be like yes or no. You may want it, you may care, you may not. But it's got to have a good keyboard. It's got to have a good touchpad. It's got to have a nice display. If you got those things right, it's a pretty good laptop. Mm-hmm. If like the keyboard's terrible on it, like that's a showstopper because you're probably going to use the keyboard the most. If it has a lousy touchpad, that's a showstopper. I've joked about that in the past. I didn't review some HP laptops because it was back before they committed to precision touchpads. They were terrible for me. I'm like, I can't use this because I use the touchpad all the time. If the display is not great, it makes it really hard. Like you can kind of get away with that a little bit, but obviously if it's got a nice display, it gives it a leg up. If it's got terrible audio, listen, Acer and Asus, they have their place in the business here. Their audios are terrible. They just don't know how to do speakers. And it's one reason I don't like reviewing them. And because it's unfair for me. But it's because I like listening to audio. I watch a lot of movies. I'll watch YouTube. So I'm always listening to the speakers. And I get it if you're a gamer, like it doesn't matter as much maybe because you're going to probably use headphones. But the speakers matter to me. So if you have all that stuff that's good, it's a pretty good laptop. And that's what ticks me off sometimes about these reviews. It's like, that's ultimately what matters. The battery life is important to mention, as is the performance and all this kind of stuff. But if you can get those fundamentals perfect or really close to it, and Surface always does, that's why it's a good device. And that leads us to the Laptop Go 3, I think.
Yeah, the Laptop Go 3. So I reviewed the Laptop Go 3. I have had experience with the Laptop Go. I have a Surface Laptop Go 1 here. This is technically a work laptop, but I use it quite a lot, to be honest, for work and whatnot. And I've enjoyed my time on the Laptop Go 1. So when the Laptop Go 3 showed up, I was quite excited to get my hands on it and use it as a personal device because, like I said, the Laptop Go 1 is more or less my laptop device. I do email on it, sometimes join meetings and stuff. That's about it. This one, I loaded all my apps on it, Spotify, Telegram, you name it. I was using it as my laptop, and I've come away shockingly impressed with it. I know that I feel like the Laptop Go has quite a negative reputation. Originally, because the entry-level model was so useless, it was the one with 4 gigs of RAM and only 128 gigs of eMMC storage, paired with a sub 1080p display, no backlit keyboard, and no fingerprint reader. It kind of was a bit of a device. But with the Laptop Go 3, Microsoft has essentially eliminated that entry-level model. So it now starts at $799, but with that, you get 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of SSD storage, along with the fingerprint reader. That's still an Intel Core i5, but it's now 12th gen Intel Core i5, and it's still a sub 1080p display, and it's still no backlit keyboard. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we'll start with the specs, because I do think the Intel Core i5 12th gen in here makes a world of difference versus the Surface Laptop Go 2 and the Surface Laptop Go 1. The Laptop Go 1 and Laptop Go 2 are fine, but from a performance perspective, especially the original, the 10th gen Intel, it wasn't great. It wasn't very fast, and I can definitely feel the difference between both of these. And in the benchmarks we did, you can see it as well. The performance increase between Laptop Go 2 and Laptop Go 3 is immense. I think it's something like 20% or 30% more performance and whatnot. Yeah. It's a big...
The multi-cores.
Yeah, it's the multi-cores. You're going from 11th gen to 12th gen is that big difference there, as Dan mentioned before. 12th gen and 13th gen really is where Intel started skyrocketing again in regards to performance. 10th and 11th gen were really the last of the old Intel where it wasn't really great, and 12th gen is the start of the new Intel where it is starting to get good. So good to see 12th gen in here. It is last gen, But going back to the fact that HP's foldable is also 12th gen, Microsoft, we asked Microsoft about this, and they said, for the target audience, they don't really care. They would rather a
It's
device
true.
that's $800 versus $1,000
Yes.
because it has a 13th gen chip in it, right? They want to save money, and you're not losing out on much performance by going for 13th gen here. So 12th gen, I think, was the right call. Intel Core i5, perfectly fine for the workflows it's designed for. Keyboard and trackpad. I have a love-hate relationship with the keyboard, but the trackpad I think is fine. There's no complaints with it. It's maybe a touch on the small side if I had to complain about anything, but that's really pulling at strings. It's mostly fine.
I think that was a stretch a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, touchpads could always be bigger,
Absolutely.
but I think it's a decent size. But I get
It's
what
fine.
you're saying.
It's a fine. Yeah, it's absolutely fine. I have no real complaints with it. Is what I'm trying to say. It's totally fine. The click on it is satisfying. Don't know if I can get it on the mic here. It's nice. It's a soft click. It's really nice. The keyboard, tactile. Sounds great, feels great. It's, I think, 1.2 or 1.3 millimeters of key travel. Really nice to type on. It's more or less full size. I didn't have any complaints with the size of it. The only problem I have with it is that it's not got a backlit keyboard. Now, as a night owl, that's something you don't realize you enjoy and take advantage of until it's gone. Most laptops I use have a backlit keyboard. It's not really... I don't think I've ever used a laptop other than the Laptop Go 1 that didn't have a backlit keyboard. And so when I was sitting in bed at night or in the living room in the evenings when the lights were dim and stuff, you notice that this doesn't have a backlit keyboard. Now, if you're a touch typist, it's okay. You can sort of get around it. Once you find your footing, you can type. You don't need to look at the keyboard. It's all good. But if you're not somebody like that, if you're somebody who does sort of need to see the keyboard as they type, if you're a night owl as well, this laptop is just not for you. You're not going to enjoy using it because you will struggle to see that keyboard. But if that's not an issue for you, if you are a touch typist or you don't plan to use it in the dark, then that's not an issue. This is absolutely a great keyboard experience overall in that case. Onto the display. You know me, I'm a big high resolution buff. I get upset at screens that are low resolution, and this device has a low resolution screen. It's a sub 1080p display. It's almost 1080p. I think it's like 900p or 950p technically. It's 1536 by 1024, so it doesn't meet that 1080p bar. And you can see pixels on the screen. It's not a air quotes retina screen or a pixel sense in that form where it's pixels are indiscernible from a working distance. You can see them. Text looks a little bit fuzzy and rounded corners look a bit fuzzy as a result of it. But the display is okay. If you're somebody who doesn't care about resolution, a lot of people use 1080p on a 24 or 27-inch monitor. Those people, I don't know how you do it, but they clearly don't see resolution. People like that are not going to see the issue here with the thing I'm talking about with the low res. Everything else about the display is actually really good. The viewing angles, the contrast, the color accuracy. I think you got 96% rating, sRGB. That's not bad at all. This overall, it's also touchscreen, which is nice to see. I love a Windows device with a touchscreen. More laptops should have them. And it's it's a what's it called, where the display meets the glass perfectly, laminated display, which is also great as well, which also improves the viewing angles and whatnot. Also, the bezels are thin, they're thinner than the Surface laptop, so that's always nice to see. That does come at the cost of the webcam. The webcam is only 720p. It's not the best Surface webcam out there. Actually, I think it might be probably the worst Surface webcam you can find on a Surface PC. Every other Surface PC has much better webcams. Does have great microphones though. It has the same studio quality microphones as found on the Studio 2 Plus and the Surface Laptop Studio, which is great to see. And then there's the design. I spent some time talking about the design. It's identical to the first one, but I wanted to just sort of re-highlight how nice the design of this laptop is. I like what Microsoft did with this. I like how it's a combination of metal and plastic. If you were tasked with trying to make the Surface Laptop 5 cheaper, what would you do? There's good ways to go about it and there's bad ways to go about it. I think Microsoft took the right choice here. They basically kept the premium materials on all the surfaces where the user touches most. That's the lid and that's the keyboard deck. Everywhere else, we can save money by changing that to plastic. And it's not this cheap sort of echoey plastic. It's a nice high quality soft touch plastic. It's not bad. It feels great, looks great. But as a result of it, it's a lot lighter and it just feels more durable. I'm happy to throw this around and kind of not care about it really, which is kind of the point for the target demographic of the Laptop Go 3, which is really students and first-line workers, people in the office. Yeah, that's great. Microsoft built this laptop knowing most people who use it aren't going to care about it in a weird way, if you know what I mean. These aren't laptops you buy because you love them. They're laptops you use for work or school. And when you look at it like that, the Laptop Go 3 is great. I do think it's a touch on the expensive side. If it was $100 cheaper, I think it would be a lot more recommendable, I think, because again, that sub 1080p display, the lack of a backlit keyboard, when you compare that to other Windows PCs in that price bracket, almost all of them have at minimum 1080p with a backlit keyboard. You know, that's where the comparison starts to fall down for laptop Go 3, because it is missing those odd things that just everything else has. But at the same time, this might be the best designed laptop, $800 laptop, or it's one of them for sure. I haven't seen every $800 laptop, of course. But I also think the size of it plays an important role here, because, you know, as I was writing this review, I was trying to find what is this laptop's unique selling point. I think it's the size. It's a 12.4-inch laptop. There aren't many 12-inch laptops on the market, and certainly aren't many 12-inch Windows laptops. You might be able to find some Chromebook ones and whatnot, and maybe the iPad 12 counts as a laptop if you wanted to. But in regards to Windows, there aren't many 12-inch Windows laptops. You've got 13-inch to sort of the baseline, and you go 14, 16, 17, and maybe 10 or 11-inch laptops on the very low-end side. 12-inch isn't really a thing in the Windows space. And so if you are somebody who likes the 12-inch screen size, this is probably your only option for the design and the quality and stuff. This is probably the best 12-inch Windows laptop. But again, that puts it in a bubble, right? It's 12 inches. Yes, it's the best Windows laptop, but that's only if you're looking for 12 inches. If you want to go up an inch to 13 inches, then of course your options widen quite significantly. But yeah, that's my overall review. I like it. I like it a lot. I would recommend it to a student looking to buy a Surface laptop or to buy a new Windows laptop for school if they have the budget. So students can save $100 on it, or maybe even a bit more than that. They've got a commercial edition for $699, which halves the storage. Doesn't come with a fingerprint reader, but you'd still get 8 gigs of RAM and the same processor and stuff, and that's $699. That I think will be great for students and stuff. But yeah, you've got a laptop Go 3 there as well, Dan. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so normally I don't review. I mean, I've done the reviews for these in the past, but usually I defer them to you. You're a bigger fan of the Go. And part of it's just because I'm spoiled, also because I'm just busier these days. But I did get sent the Go 3 as well in the green color, and it's 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of storage.
You got the max one, yeah. That one actually costs a lot. We should talk about that real quick. The model Dan got costs $1,250. Don't buy that one.
So. Yeah, so let's talk about that pricing for a second. We mentioned that last week. So I think some people were interpreting as they raised the prices of Surface Laptop Go 3, which they did not. I don't believe so. They said so. Like in other words, the $799 model is the same cost as the $799 model from last time. It's the same features. In other words, it's a Core i5, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage. So it's the same price, $799. What they did was they got rid of the two lower SKUs. The first one being a 4 gig, 128 gigabyte storage. The second one was 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage. So they got rid of those two. Now the 4 gig one, I had no issue with. I've used it before, but a lot of people, said that's too little for Windows. And Microsoft finally came around, and yeah, it's true. There really are no 4 gig devices anymore. So they got rid of the 4 gig model. And then you're left with 8 and 128 gigs of storage. 128 gigs of storage is not that much either, especially when you fill in the 50 gigs for Windows. So I got rid of that one. And so you start now with the 8 gig, 256 gigs model. And that's the $799, which is the same price as it was last time. Now, we joked around about this last week about well, here's the situation. Those two that they got rid of could have been their best-selling versions of Laptop Go, and they just shot themselves in the foot. But my guess is they probably had a meeting about this, and they looked at the numbers for those, and they probably didn't sell as much as they anticipated and wanted to reduce some overhead. And so the one that was probably bought the most was probably the $799 model.
Right.
like I'm just gonna take a wild guess because 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage, that's kind of the sweet spot. That really is. And so my guess is, like I said, that's probably the best-selling model. And so they kept that around. They bumped it then up to 16 gigs of RAM, not for your consumer, although your consumer might benefit from it, might want it, but for probably enterprise, because a lot of companies do buy Laptop Goes. Yeah. In fact, we said this before, our company does. Future PLC is one of, I think it is the largest digital publisher on the planet. We're bigger than Vox and all that. We're huge. We own Madam as well, Space.com, Tom's Hardware, Laptop Mag, um, Marie Claire, who own magazines. Like it's a big company. Our company distributes Laptop Go 2s to all employees who need a laptop. Yeah, I think that's kind of funny
Yeah.
because I'm like, I wish they had something better. Because if you're doing this job, you're opening a lot of spreadsheets, I would hope you would have a little bit more. But they didn't have an option to get a 16 gig version, where I think a lot of people who work at our company would benefit from having a 16 gig laptop with more storage. So my hunch is that they added those models because there was demand for it. That's usually how that stuff works, by the way. Is like I don't think they took a risk and like maybe we should just try 16 gigs. I think they got a lot of feedback from companies who are like, it would be cool if we can have a version that had 16 gigs of RAM and more storage. And I think Microsoft obliged by that. And again, that's a separate thing. Now, is it expensive? Yeah, it's expensive. But if you're going to be also buying these in bulk and all that, they get a bigger discount and they get support built in through enterprise and all that kind of stuff. So, but I mean, our company bought them, so I
Yeah.
don't know what to tell you. Um, that said, so talking about it, I normally don't use the laptop goes. Why? Well, I just talked about how I have a $3,200 laptop studio. Like, you know what it's like to go from that or a $5,000 HP laptop to a laptop go. That said, I actually really like the laptop Go 3 because of the 12th gen.
Mm.
The 12th gen makes it feel like a really fast and quick laptop. The performance is really good on it. Why? Because you're going from 4 cores to I think 8 now. And it matters. That's why the multi-core score goes through the roof. 12th gen is such a massive jump in performance. And so now you got that in here with a Core i5 along with 16 gigs of RAM. They've got the SSD improved in process in the speed and the RAM's faster. When you combine all that stuff, the performance on this thing is pretty awesome. Like it's good enough for me what I need to use it. In fact, it was so good when I went to HP yesterday. So I traveled to New York. It's an all-day trip. I would have taken my HP Dragonfly, the G4, as I mentioned before. That's my favorite laptop with the 5G. It gets good battery life. It's 13th gen. HP nails everything on that one. And I ran into people who were at the event yesterday who are also running the Dragonfly, who all say the same thing. They're like, yeah, this is a really good laptop. So normally I would have taken that for those reasons, but I took the laptop Go 3 instead because I was like, this thing is pretty cool. And the battery life is really good on it. Like, I was also surprised by the battery life. Like, that's an all-day device, in my opinion. But with the
Yeah.
keyboard, so again, the fundamentals, right? Keyboard, is it good? Yeah, really good keyboard. There's no flex on it, right? It's
Mm.
a solid, there's a lot of, I'll get this in a sec, but a lot of cheaper laptops have flex in the keyboard. So especially in the center, you press down
Yeah.
and it dips down. And that's considered, a lot of people don't like that. Is a touchpad really good? Yeah, it's a really good touchpad. I actually like it a lot. Could be bigger? I guess. I mean, whatever. But I don't feel it's small. It's not like Lenovo's touchpads feel small because they have those stupid buttons at the top for track point. It's, those are small.
Yeah.
Um, this isn't that. Is a display good? This is where, right, yeah, it could be higher resolution. I don't really have a problem with the resolution. I don't really notice the pixels, but my eyes are failing. So, um, but it could be better. On the other hand, it helps with the battery life. It keeps the cost down. But otherwise, is it a good display? Like, do the colors look nice? Is it punchy? Is it bright? Yeah, it is. It gets pretty bright for its price range, actually. Is the audio good? Yeah, actually, the audio is really pretty good on it. Does it have the right ports? It could always use more, but has Type A, has Type C, has Surface Connect. Basically, all you need. It's got a decent front-facing camera. You're right. I think Microsoft is actually slipping in the camera department. HP,
Yeah.
by the way, is the one to chase right now. HP does 5 megapixel cameras in almost all their mid-range to premium hardware. They've even done an 8 megapixel. They really stepped up. They're the best, in my opinion, right now in terms of laptop cameras. But it's a good enough camera. And then you're right. The overall quality of it, when you close it, it's quiet, just like the laptop,
Mm-hmm.
the regular laptop is, right? The hinge is perfectly balanced, and when you close it, it just has a nice shut noise to it. The aluminum or whatever they're using on the top looks great. I agree with you. I agree that the plastic on the bottom actually feels better because you don't have to worry about damaging it. It also makes the device lighter. It's an incredibly light laptop and incredibly
Yeah.
small, which is one reason why I took it. The Dragonfly is also very light, so it was not so much an issue, but I'm still surprised. But the overall quality of this thing is just on a different level. Now I know like people are like, oh, but 799 is expensive. You can get an $800 laptop from this company, HP or whatever, and has all these features. And you're right, but a lot of times you're going to start to sacrifice quality. The device will be a lot more plasticky. It'll have flex in the keyboards. The audio, I guarantee you, will probably be terrible. Maybe the touchpad is small or not as good. Um, so you're going to compromise, but this is, I'm telling you, going to be the highest quality $800 laptop you can buy.
I think you're right.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think that matters. And I don't think it's just specs. You can't just say a laptop is specs because I think Acer and Asus, uh, they throw a lot of specs into their hardware. You won't find me ever using them.
Yeah.
Um, and I hate to be a snob, but like they don't get audio. Their touchpads tend to be not as good. Um, Sometimes their keyboards aren't, or I don't like the designs. The designs feel like they're dated from the 1990s. It has flex on it. It's just jagged edges or something like that. Uh, so that matters, I think. I put it this way. There's no $800 laptop you would find me normally using voluntarily. Like I guarantee if you gave me an $800 one from Dell or HP or Lenovo, I'd be like, ugh. Like, but when I'm using the Surface one, I'm like, I was actually happy using it. I took it with me, and battery lasted all day, and it was just enjoyable to use. Now you're right, all the criticisms, like the display could be better. The keyboard backlight, that is a sore point. I wish it did have a backlight. I agree
Yeah.
there. I like it has the fingerprint reader. It's nice. You see that a lot though in this price range. That you don't do the facial camera a lot of times. And the performance was good. Battery life is good. Like,
Battery
listen,
life was
it's
actually.
a good
I
laptop.
think we're underselling how good the battery life was. In our test, we got 12 hours, which, when you look at the
Yeah,
graphs we put together, the Laptop Go 2 got 7. Like
yeah.
they've almost doubled the battery life on Laptop Go 3, and I guess that's thanks to the efficiency improvements on 12th gen, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it helps. I did read I forgot who did it. One review said the battery life was terrible. I don't know why
I
they
don't know
said
how
that,
they did
but
that.
all I know is I used it all day yesterday,
Yeah,
and it was great. It was great. So I don't know how they're testing their battery life, but for what I needed for my job, that's a joke here, right? So I have a Surface Laptop Studio 2, all this kind of stuff. Do I need that for my job? Absolutely not. I could do my job from the Laptop Go 3, which is why a lot of people at our company can do their job from the Laptop Go 3, which is why they're distributed as the company computer. Um, so that's technically all I need. So I could use this device, and I liked it. I think the color is nice, the quality is nice. I don't know. It's like I said, it's the best, the highest quality $800 laptop you're going to get. And I think a lot of reviewers, just ignore that, or they don't consider it to be, the selling point. But I really do think it is. I
and
I also think a lot of these reviewers, I can tell you, don't normally review $800 laptops.
yeah,
Like, so you need a comparison to actually use them to make a definitive call on that. If you're just going to go this by the specs, sure, but Surface isn't about specs a lot of times. It's about the quality of the device and experience. And like I said, the fundamentals on this, I would say 90% there. They're really, really good typing, all that. So
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know what review said they got bad battery life. I'm just looking on Google real quick here. Most reviews say it got excellent battery life. Wired got 15 hours. That's insane.
Yeah.
This is fantastic. This is almost Windows on ARM level battery life.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
fantastic. It really is.
Yeah. I think a lot of people just soured on Surface, and now it's a
Yeah.
little bit more cool to dunk on it because it doesn't look exciting. But I disagree. In fact, I'm going to write an editorial about how much I like the Laptop Go 3 and how surprising I thought that is. But it's a cool device, man. Like,
Yeah.
if I wasn't testing this this HP Bizarro $5,000 laptop, which is even better for me because yeah, when I travel and I go to a hotel room, I can actually do work on this and feel comfortable. I'm one of those people where I'm sitting in front of a 32 or 34-inch 6K display. When you throw me on any laptop, I'm going to feel cramped. I don't feel like I want to do as much work.
Right.
It just is. I don't care if it's a Mac. I don't care if it's a laptop studio. I'm going to feel like I'm cramped. So having the HP one is going to help me a lot. But
Yeah.
there we go. That's our Surface stuff. Hopefully, you guys found it interesting
Real
and
quick,
insightful. Yep.
Sorry, real quick. A few people have asked us if we're going to review the Surface Go 4.
Oh,
The reason we haven't is because Microsoft hasn't sent press any Go 4 review units. And I think the reason for that is because it is a commercial-only release. For some reason, they're a bit weird about commercial-only releases. They sometimes eventually send them to some press, but not always and not to everyone. So it's up for debate whether or not we're going to get one to review whenever they choose to send them out. Because if you remember the Surface Laptop SE, that came out and then it was like, I think a few months before we got one to review. This will probably be a similar thing. They didn't send media Go 4s to review, so that's why we've not reviewed it.
yeah. Someone's asking, what's going on with Windows on ARM? Is it dead?
No.
LOL from me.
It's not dead.
You're about to see ARM take off in Windows. It'll be in 2024, early-ish. Stay tuned. You have about 2 weeks. You're going to learn a lot about it. Qualcomm's going to unveil their new Orion processor, which is supposed to be, we're hearing, faster than the Apple M2 and also very efficient.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's,
I wouldn't be surprised. The other thing is Qualcomm said this, and that they had a lot of design wins. And the rumor is you're going to see a lot of the major companies release at least one device, maybe even multiple devices using ARM, because everybody's been so happy sort of with the performance, the value, and the power. I wouldn't be surprised in Hawaii that not only do we get all the details on this processor, the amount of cores and what they're saying for battery life and the performance and the availability, I'm pretty sure we might see HP, maybe Lenovo, probably Lenovo. Lenovo's really big on ARM. They really believe in it. Maybe Dell. I think you're going to see some of those companies on stage with products, or at least they're going to be showing off briefly in photos.
And I know for a fact that the next version of Windows will have some crazy new features that I don't know if they will be exclusive to ARM, but they will be exclusive to devices with NPUs, in which Orion will be one. It will be ones, because there will be more than one chip, to my knowledge. That will
Intel Meteor Lake is NPUs.
It's all coming. It's all going to be wild, and it starts next year with Windows on ARM and Windows 12 or Windows V Next. I don't want to call it Windows 12 because it might not be called that.
Right. We'll get to that in a moment, but before that, we have a quick ad read.
Yep. Once again, Indeed is sponsoring this episode of the Windows Central podcast. Thank you for sponsoring. When it comes to hiring, don't wait for talent to find you. Find it first with Indeed. When it comes to hiring, you need Indeed. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed is a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. They streamline hiring with powerful tools that find you matched candidates, and with Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed. One of the things we love about Indeed is that candidates you invite to apply are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search, according to Indeed's data. And they get you one step closer to the hire by immediately matching you with quality candidates. Even better, Indeed's the only job site where you only pay for applications that meet your must-have requirements. Indeed is an unbelievably powerful hiring platform, delivering 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest. So join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. You can start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at indeed.com/WCP. That offer is good for a limited time only. That is indeed.com/WCP for a $75 credit. Indeed.com/WCP, and support the show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Terms and conditions do apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And with that, we shall be moving on to the Windows 12 segment of the podcast, even though I just said I don't want to call it Windows 12. Everybody is calling it Windows 12. It's annoying. It annoys me, but I guess we have to follow the trend because otherwise nobody will know what we're talking about when we call it Windows V Next or Hudson Valley. But yes, the next version of Windows is, of course, in development. We already know that at this point. It's supposed to be launching next year. And this week, the rumor mill was very active with reports that the next version of Windows, Windows 12, will be subscription-based. Where did these rumors come from? Well, references to subscription UIs were found in the latest Windows preview builds, which of course everybody jumped to the conclusion, this means Windows 12 will be a subscription-based OS. It means we have to pay a monthly fee for it. It's the end of the world. I'm here to tell you that's not the case. Windows 12 will not be a subscription-based OS. Yes, I can see why people might think Microsoft is eager to do this. You know, they've had lots of success with Office 365. Surely they want to turn Windows into a subscription thing as well. I can tell you it's not going to happen, not now, not ever. And the reason for it is because it's not fashionable to charge for your operating system. Apple doesn't do it with iOS and iPadOS or macOS. Google doesn't do it with Chrome OS and Android. Microsoft won't do it with Windows. If Microsoft were to try and charge a monthly fee for Windows, it would essentially alienate most of the users who would turn away to something more cost efficient because they're not being charged monthly to use it. It makes more sense to charge for the services on top of Windows versus Windows itself, because Windows comes with the device. That's you buy Windows when you buy the PC, right? That's when that transaction is made. You don't need to keep buying it after the fact. That doesn't make any sense, and Microsoft knows this, and so they will never charge a monthly fee for Windows 12, or any version of Windows in the future. What the references, the strings, the references found in the latest preview builds we're referring to is a new SKU that was found called IoT Enterprise Subscription. It's an IoT Enterprise thing. The end user doesn't need to worry about this. This does not affect client. Microsoft has been charging subscription fees for Windows in the enterprise space for many years at this point. There's not new information, so that's nothing to worry about there. That said, don't be surprised if we start seeing some certain features or capabilities in the next version of Windows that do require a subscription. The OS itself will never require one. You will be able to install Windows 12 and use it like you do Windows 11. You will never be charged monthly for that. But as we move into the future, the idea of hybrid computing is going to become a lot more common, and Microsoft does want to push this across its entire portfolio, Windows, Xbox, HoloLens. We talked about this a bit last week with the FTC leaks and whatnot. Hybrid experiences are a thing Microsoft wants to start pushing in these products. And what I mean by hybrid experiences is experiences that are 50% local or 70% local and the other percent cloud-based. Now, we're already starting to see this really with things like Copilot. Copilot is right now is fully cloud-based, and it is free. I don't know if it'll be free forever, but it's certainly free for now. But with the next version of Windows, there's a lot more coming, especially in regards to Windows 365, which of course is a subscription service and will most likely continue to be one when it launches for consumers. They're building integration and features on top of that will benefit the local Windows 12 desktop. Things like the ability to install an app to the cloud. That's the kind of thing that they're looking at as a possibility for Windows VNext, where you're a user, you have Windows 12 on any sort of laptop Go 3, Laptop Studio, it doesn't matter, it's a Windows laptop, but you are able to subscribe to Windows 365 and have your own version of your PC in the cloud where you can install apps to it. And then using integration and stuff, you can see those apps in your local start menu, and clicking on them will load up a window on your local desktop as if it was running locally, but it's not, it's running from the cloud. And there's many reasons why you might want to do that. One of them being, if you are running, say, a Laptop Go 3 or a Surface Go 4 with a low-end processor and integrated graphics, but you need to edit a 4K video real quick, not really possible on the hardware you've got. But with Cloud PC, you can specify a Cloud PC with a dedicated graphics card with a more powerful processor, install Premiere Pro to that, and then suddenly you're running Premiere Pro with all of that extra specs that you needed on a Surface Go. It's now running on your desktop locally as if it was running locally, even though it's not. That's the sort of experience Microsoft wants to bring to the end user with the next version of Windows in 2024 and beyond, using Windows 365 for consumers, which will be a subscription-based thing. So if we look at Windows 12 as an operating system, that will not be a subscription thing. You'll be able to pay for it once and run it, or if you're a Windows 11 user, it'll probably be a free upgrade. You get it for free. There you are. You're running it. No more fees required. But if you want to start utilizing some of those hybrid experiences, I'm sure there'll be some AI features that will also technically fall under this. Then there may be a subscription for those sort of things. Just like how there's already a subscription for OneDrive backup or Office 365. Those aren't free. If you want, OneDrive is free for 5 gigs, but that's useless. If you are using OneDrive to back up your files on a Windows PC, you're already paying a subscription for that. And so this is just more of that, more or less. More features in additional subscriptions, or an additional subscription that may attach itself to Microsoft 365. I don't know how they're going to present it, but that will be a thing with the next version of Windows. I'm almost certain of it, because there's no way otherwise Microsoft can afford to host all of these hybrid experiences that they're planning for Windows VNext and beyond. Now, there will be scenarios where, especially in regards to AI, where Newer hardware will be able to handle it locally. There are plans to have things like Copilot operate at least in part locally on the device, and I'm sure that will start next year with the Orion chips and whatnot with the NPUs. That will help Microsoft out big time, and it might even keep Copilot free. So yeah, that was the news this week. People were worried that Windows 12 would be subscription based. I'm here to tell you it won't be subscription based, but there may be some experiences on top of Windows 12 that require a subscription to utilize. Microsoft has been trying for a long time now to push Microsoft account syncing on Windows 11. When you sign up for Windows these days, you have to be connected to the internet, and it forces you to use an MSA. That wasn't the case with Windows 10. I know Windows 11 has a much higher Microsoft account usage rates as a result of this forced requirement. It's still not 100%, believe it or not. There are obviously lots of people who are circumventing this. There are ways to do it, and I'm sure there always will be ways to do it. But Microsoft wants to start tying more and more Windows into the MSA because they want you to obviously be subscribing to things and making money for them, because Windows doesn't really make money anymore, to my knowledge, and that's because there's no business model for it anymore. Because, like I said, it's no longer fashionable to charge for operating systems. It's not a thing that companies do anymore. So Microsoft can't do it. There's no way they can float. If Windows was the only operating system or the biggest operating system that had control of the market, then sure. But there are alternatives these days, and people are very happy to switch away from Windows. So, yeah, Microsoft can't, frankly, charge a monthly fee for it. And so they won't. And I'm willing to bet my life on Windows 12 not being a subscription-based OS. And I would even say the same for Windows 13 and Windows 14 and Windows 15. It's just not going to happen. There's no feasible way of Microsoft doing it. Do you agree, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I find this rumor silly every time it starts. They already have subscriptions for premium tier services, right? Microsoft 365. I could see AI obviously someday being part of that. So they already have a way to sort of charge people. They have an Xbox, Game Pass. So I feel like they already have that stuff, whereas the Windows thing is just the medium to deliver further subscriptions. So I don't see the advantage they would have in charging the OS. Plus, they already charge a license for the operating system. OEMs might have a problem with this too. So I just feel like this happens often, but it's always kind of nonsense. So
yeah, someone on the chat real quick is just saying LLMs with billions of parameters running locally on consumer devices can't possibly have a good experience. It require the most beefy GPU, and the fan will run like
that's
crazy.
Not true.
So you're
that's
referring
nonsense.
Also you're referring to GPUs. I'm talking about NPUs. This is NPUs will be what's required for the LLM. I can't say LLM without tripping off my words. Large language model. NPUs will be required for that to be handled on device, and this will be, to my knowledge, exclusive to the next generation of NPUs coming with Intel 14th gen and Orion. The next gen NPUs have teraflops of power. I'm not talking more powerful than an Xbox Series X, to my knowledge. It's insane. This is, we're not kidding when we say these chips are going to rival Apple's M series. These are going to be insane chips from Qualcomm at the very least. And Microsoft is planning a lot of big AI related features around it, which I can't talk about today, but they are coming, and I will talk about them as soon as I possibly can. You're saying NPUs are specialized GPU, they're the same class of chips. Perhaps, but all I know is Microsoft will be limiting it to newer NPUs. They are not going to be relying on GPUs for this stuff that I'm talking about here.
Yeah, no, this isn't really true with NPRs or specialized GPUs. I don't know what that means. It's a special
all system on a
chip. Yeah, they're specialized processors. Intel's been working on theirs for 4 or 5 years now. They told us that these will be able to run LLMs locally. Mm-hmm. That is the goal, and the chip is designed to already do that. The one that's in Meteor Lake, it's a separate. Meteor Lake is broken down, if you read our article, to tiles. There are 4 tiles, and on the main SoC one is the NPU built into it. But it is absolutely it's 30% more efficient. I feel like it's 8 times more powerful and 30% more efficient. You could still use the GPU in addition to that, but no, the NPUs are going to be really good for this stuff and for battery life. That's the whole point of them. That's why Laptop Studio 2 is the only 13th gen that I know that has an NPU built in. The idea is that runs like for your the camera enhancements, blurring background, eye tracking, the eye gaze correction. normally that would use your CPU or GPU if it has one, and that would, if you're running meetings and all and other software, you're going to get worse performance for those apps where now it's running the NPU in the background. Like you don't get stuttering when you're running a laptop Studio 2 and using all those features where I've seen on Ultrabooks with the Intel stuff with the 12 and 13 gens without NPUs, when you run them, it becomes choppy, because you have a lot processing. Qualcomm doesn't have this issue though.
Yeah,
because they have NPUs.
And Microsoft is racing to do this because they need to offload a lot of the weight on its Azure services. Right now, Copilot is a 100% a cloud-based experience, so it's utilizing their Azure farms to render all the information it's being given and asked and whatnot. That's a costly bill for them, and so they would very much like to have not the entire LLM. I can't say it. LLM, not the entire large language model, but a chunk of it locally, so that can be rendered on the NPUs that are up and coming. And then if it needs to reach out for additional stuff, it can do that, of course. It will be, again, hybrid experience. It will be local based, but there will be a cloud element that if it needs to reach out and get more information or render additional stuff in the cloud, it can and will do that. But yes, the idea of rendering Copilot locally on device is a thing that they are working on and will be coming, to my knowledge, with the next version of Windows. This isn't like a future leaning or far future sort of concept. This is happening. It's being worked on. To my knowledge, it's coming next year.
Very good. All right. I think that about does it for us. Was there anything else on the notes? No. Oh, so our Surface Neo Duo 4-year anniversary. All right, we'll go through this one real quick because it's just kind of sad.
Yeah, it's just more a recap, really. That 4 years ago, we were a lot younger, and there was a lot more hopeful time, I think, for Windows and Surface fans, where we had an unveiling of obviously Surface Neo and Surface Duo. The Duo, of course, being announced after we thought it was dead under the codename Andromeda. That was a nice surprise. Nobody really knew it was being announced at that event. The Neo, we sort of knew was coming. We knew it was a bigger Andromeda with Windows Lite, as it was known at the time, then unveiled as Windows 10X. And it was this moment for Microsoft where they sort of wore their heart on their sleeve a little bit, and they were like, "Hey, so we're gonna talk about what we think is next, the next paradigm in computing." And what they thought was next was dual screen foldable PCs and smartphones. And looking back at it now, it's quite insane just how open Microsoft was about its future plans that were clearly not ready. As we know now, the Surface Neo was a pipe dream. It was vaporware. It was a product that Microsoft wasn't entirely sure they could build, or at least they thought they could build, but turned out they couldn't because of poor silicon from Intel. At the time, Intel were not in a great place, and Lakefield, which was supposed to be this competitor to ARM, was a disaster. It ran hot, wasn't very powerful, and Lakefield was killed shortly after the Surface Neo was unveiled, or at least a year after it was unveiled, something like that. And that more or less was what really killed the Neo. It was the fact that Lakefield died, and now the Surface Neo was without a chip. But then there was other issues with it as well. Of course, Windows 10X wasn't finished. It was supposed to be done holiday 2020. They delayed it another year, and even then it wasn't good enough, and so they cancelled the whole thing. And now not only is Neo without a chip, it's also without an operating system. So that hardware was basically left for dead. There was nothing they could really do to save it. Of course, they could have put another Intel chip in it. I don't think they could, because Surface Neo, it was incredibly thin. And I don't even think now there's an Intel chip that could fit in there without it needing to be actively cooled for it to function. They could maybe go ARM, but the problem with the Neo was that it was an Intel design, and so it's not so easy just to swap it out with ARM and call it a day. There might be some patterns in there that are co-owned with Intel, or some parts of it that Intel wouldn't be happy with, and that could damage Microsoft's partnership with Intel. So it wasn't so easy as to just swap out the processors with an ARM chip and call it a day. They would have to basically go back to the drawing board and redesign it. And by the time they could have got around to doing that, they might as well just release a foldable tablet at that point. There's no point going this dual screen route, because by the time all this happened, of course, the dual screen vision was dead. Microsoft had sort of walked it back and said, "Hey, we're not doing this. Windows 10X, it will launch for single screen," which didn't happen, and then it became Windows 11. It just a bit of a mess overall. And what I think it's done, that event, Microsoft most likely looks back at that event, because I think we all consider it to be the best Surface event, right? That event, if you watch it start to end, it's just hype throughout. It does start a little bit slow with the boring Surface Laptop 3 and Surface Pro 7 Plus, but then it gets really interesting. We get the Surface Pro X, which is like the forward-leaning look at the Surface Pro. It was essentially a preview as to what's coming next for Surface Pro, right? Pro X was the first Windows on ARM device since the Surface 2, and yeah, it was a big moment for Surface Pro in general, and that was quite successful for Microsoft, I guess. Maybe not the ARM one specifically, but that design, which has now made its way to the main Surface Pro line as well. And ARM is still around. You know, the Pro X was the SQ1. We're now on the SQ3, and the SQ4, to my knowledge, is coming next year as well. So that stuck around. That was a success story for Microsoft. And then, of course, we got the Neo and Duo, which was the big moment. I think that's the reason why many people would look back on this event so positively, because that unveiling was pretty hype. It was executed so well, especially the Duo one, because again, nobody knew the Duo was coming. It was a wild moment because it was this new hardware that nobody knew was coming. A rare case where nothing about it had leaked beforehand. And then it was running Android, which was this whole new paradigm for Microsoft, a new, competitor operating system running on Surface hardware. How can this be? It's going to be a great experience. The app gap problem is solved. Nothing could go wrong. And then everything went wrong with the hard software. I don't know how Microsoft did it, but they released the most buggiest Android phone in the history of Android phones. And it took them too long to fix it. Most people returned theirs. It was a disastrous thing for Microsoft internally. The sale numbers were incredibly low. Reputation damaged. Surface Duo 2 came out and reviews were actually worse than the first one because people were just tired of this and they just wanted it to be affordable at that point. And so that whole vision was also put to rest soon after the Duo 2 launched because nobody wanted one, which is a crying shame. And now Panos is gone. Panos was the guy leading those. He was the man who thought dual screen was the next paradigm. Was he wrong? Perhaps. I don't know. I pretty believed in it. I was ready to be that guy with a dual screen PC in his bag and a dual screen phone in his pocket.
Yeah, I think part of it was because dual screen was easier to do and more resilient than foldable.
People say this, but Microsoft at the time also said they did testing and they found that dual screen makes you more productive. They said that. They were like, right. No, we did the science. And dual screen is a more productive setup. That it's defined real estate, word for word. That's what Panos Panay said.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, the whole thing's, I don't know, it's a shame. But yeah, so I agree with the dual screen thing for the phone. I still like that design
me too.
better than the Fold. Mm-hmm. When it comes to laptops, though, I think a foldable display is probably the way to go. Especially after seeing, Lenovo tried a dual screen one, and it's not bad. It's a really nice attempt. But for the reasons HP gave for why they went with foldable instead of dual, because as I mentioned, they did test dual. It's just, yeah.
I'm just thinking. I think one of the biggest problems with the Surface Duo when it was unveiled was perception. People were comparing it to a foldable because obviously the Galaxy Fold had been unveiled at that point, and it was still a very new category. But people were looking at both side by side and going, "Oh well, the Galaxy Fold is clearly superior." I think that's because Microsoft marketed the Duo wrong. They marketed it as a device that closes that you open. What if it was marketed backwards in the sense that the device is a single screen phone with a second phone screen that you pull out from behind? So it comes in the box with the screens on outward. So it's a phone with a second screen rather than a foldable that closes shut and opens. If they had just made that small change to the marketing, I think we'd be in a much different place now. But because because remember, Andromeda was in development long before the Galaxy Fold was even an idea in our minds. They kind of wanted to be first to this whole idea of foldable phones, and they just weren't. And so by the time the Duo was ready to be unveiled to the public, it no longer made sense in the way that they were building it out to be. So they should have reversed it. I think it should have been a phone that was presented as a single screen phone. The unveiling trailer should have been, oh, here's a phone. It's a normal phone. Oh, phone stuff. And then it would have been like, by the way, the Surface Book thing where they're like, oh, by the way, the lid comes off. It would have been like, oh, by the way, there's another screen behind the phone. And that should have been how they market it, in my opinion. Looking back on it now, but
yeah, it's always a tough decision. Yeah. But yeah, Microsoft perhaps wasn't the best at advertising anyway. For instance, the Surface Laptop Studio 2 we mentioned, that was supposed to come out in spring. That's one reason why it has 13th gen. And, because a lot of people are like, oh, but 14th gen's right around the corner. But this was supposed to come out in the spring, which, you know, would have been fine. Now it's like it is a little bit late to release 13th gen, but then HP just released 12th gen. So I don't know if it's that big of a deal. 14th gen, although it's supposed to be a big deal in terms of, for instance, I do think 14th gen and Laptop Studio 2 would be way better, right? I think it could benefit from that, but we're going to just have to wait. So, but yeah, the dual screen, I don't think it's going to I don't think it's going to happen.
It's not coming back. There's no way Microsoft releases another dual screen phone or PC for that matter. There's no Surface Neo. It's just not happening.
Yeah, I agree there. So, dream is dead, but we have a $5,000 HP PC to look forward to. I should also mention, before people jump on it, people are always going to be like, why don't they put ARM into the HP device? It seems perfect for it. And Orion would seem to be perfect too. If I'm guessing here, though, it's a pretty good guess. This is, as I mentioned before, foldables and dual screens were both coming from, a lot of it was coming from Intel. Intel was pushing those ideas, and Intel made reference designs that companies could build off of. I'm pretty sure that HP has a really good relation. Just has a lot of Intel technology into it. Whereas when I asked Qualcomm about this, they gave an answer like that they weren't really interested in it, or that's not where they're going right now. I think it's partly because Intel was kind of cornering that market. That may change with Orion. I think, obviously, I agree. I think it would make sense to have like ARM in that kind of device. Although I think 14th gen Intel and Orion are going to be really close in terms of performance and battery life and all that. Fingers crossed, right? You may get more performance. It might be interesting. You may get more performance out of Orion, maybe even better battery life. I don't know. But then you're going to still have the benefit of Intel's, which maybe won't perform as fast. Although, I don't know. Their Intel's pretty fast. But you wouldn't have the compatibility with x86. We won't have the issue with the ARM, right? Not that there's much of an issue, but like we know Google Chrome's browser is not going to be ARM, despite the fact it could be.
I do think though with Orion, the emulation layer will be at a point where you don't really feel it for especially lightweight stuff.
Yeah, you're just going to brute force it with so much power. Yeah, you won't notice it. I agree there too. But still, it could be interesting how that does measure up. So, anywho, let's do. I guess. Do you want to do a thing of the week, and then we can do Q&A?
Oh, my thing of the week is Gen V, which is streaming now.
Oh yeah, did that start?
Yeah, it started. It's streaming now on Amazon Prime. It's a spin-off of The Boys. So if you are a fan of The Boys, you will like this. It's basically just a side story happening in the same universe, references to all the main characters and stuff, but with new characters. And so that's pretty cool to see. If you have not seen The Boys, I have no idea what it is. Word of warning, it's a very adult show, very gore-focused and lots of adult themes. Every season of The Boys tries to one-up itself on how insane the visuals are and what's happening in the scene. So just be wary of that. If you're a child, don't look it up. It's not for you. It's for adults only. And Gen V is that. It's more of that. So
yeah, I was going to say, why does it not bring up the actual reviews? It has a 96%.
It's great.
Review score on Rotten Tomatoes, which I knew it was going to do well. Although the audience score is lower. I don't know why.
I don't know why either. So far, it's a much... Okay, I will say the story... I'm not without any spoilers. It's a much more precise story, I guess, where clearly the season is only going to follow this set of characters with this storyline. There's no like B plot or anything like that. It's just something... This is what's happening. We're going episode to episode solving that problem. That's kind of maybe what some viewers have a problem with, because obviously The Boys is a much bigger scope where there's a plot, B plot. This is just a plot, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, some reviewers, it's an interesting audience, are like too derivative and violent with minimal plot development.
No, I think it's
awful.
Fine. There's a mystery. There's a little bit of a mystery. There's something going on. They're trying to figure out what's happening. And I'm sure it will tie back into The Boys season 4 or 5, whatever season's coming next. But yeah.
I'm actually upset. Like the Exorcist Believers coming out, and the trailers and artwork looks amazing for it, but it's like the early reviews are like terrible.
Oh, really? Oh, dear.
And I'm so mad because it looks like so much like the classic. I was really hoping for it. Meanwhile, Saw 10 got 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is crazy. Um, yeah, it's horror. I don't know if I have really any movies. I have seen movies, but they're slipping my head right now. I have finished Ahsoka, which it was amazing. I really, really liked it. I think it's really building up. It's Dave Filoni again. He did a bunch of Star Wars
I
stuff in the
keep
past, but
My only problem with the Star Wars TV shows right now is that they're all sort of just doing their own thing. Like I know they're
no, they're
supposed to
not
be
though.
building.
They're not. No,
Yeah.
no, Dave Filoni. I hope I'm pronouncing his name. He's doing a movie
Yes, I
that's
know.
supposed to tie Mandalorian,
hmm
Ahsoka, and what was the other show? Was there another one?
Boba Fett, Book of Boba Fett.
Oh yeah, maybe
Oh,
Boba
Andor.
Fett.
No, Andor's before though.
No, not
Andor's
Andor.
yeah,
No,
Andor's
no.
before all of this.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I guess my problem is I kind of wanted these shows, and maybe the movie will do this. I don't know, obviously. But I wanted the shows to explain how the Emperor survived episode six.
I think they're getting to that. That's supposed to be with Grogu,
Yeah, I'm
who
hoping that's
some
what
people are saying is a
happens.
clone of Yoda.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
because there was cloning references.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what made
And
me think about it. There's
yeah.
been cloning references in this. There were cloning references in Andor, which I know is before all of this, but that tech could carry over. There's
Well, maybe the witches play a role in that. So,
maybe, yeah, yeah, yeah.
that might be part of it. But what was I going to say? Yeah. So what they're building up, obviously, with Thrawn. So what's cool with Dave, what he's doing with Filoni, like the Thrawn trilogy is like a really good series of books, and but they weren't considered to be part of the canon after Disney took over. There's the expanded universe, and then I forgot what they call
Right.
them, but there's like two versions. But he's allowed to bring stuff in, and so that's what he's doing. So he brought Thrawn in, and Thrawn's like story involves Luke Skywalker too. So this may actually lead up to a bigger
Oh, good. Yeah.
role for Luke Skywalker. But Thrawn, I think, is a really good adversary. And I think some of this will tie into obviously the Emperor and how that all happens and it comes back. But um, it's also the big rumor is that with Ahsoka and how the series ends with Balin. Is that his name? Yeah, I think the bearded
hmm
Jedi guy. Um, that they're building up to Abeloth.
I've
So
no idea what that
Abeloth
is.
is like, yeah, if you look up Abeloth in Star Wars, it's almost Star Wars horror. Like she's terrifying looking. She looks like something out of a Tim Burton movie or something. She has like a split mouth and all these jagged teeth, and she got corrupted by like this source of like the Force or something like that, and she's like basically evil incarnate, and she's like so evil, like she's able to contact and woo Jedi and Sith to her, and then she like kills them and stuff like that. Like she doesn't like Sith either. She's like even worse than them. But she's a really mega like adversary that again like Luke Skywalker um, faces at some point in the books and stuff like that in the comics. But she's like really kind of creepy and scary, and it's just it's really really outer galaxy type stuff, which is what they kind of explored already in Ahsoka. So. But that's the rumor that they're leading up to, and that's supposedly what when Balin says, he has a calling and he's here. That a
Yeah.
lot of people are saying that's
Didn't
what Abeloth
the
is.
actor who portrayed him die though?
Yes, yeah,
So they have to
yeah. So
recast
we
him.
don't know. Yeah, so we don't know what's going to happen there. That sucks because he was so good.
He was good, yeah. I
Like
liked
his
him in it,
character
yeah.
was awesome. I mean, all the characters in Ahsoka I think were awesome. Actually, that's why I really
Yeah,
liked it.
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought all of them were really good. Um, so yeah, I don't know, but yeah, go watch it. Highly recommended. Other than that, I don't think I really have anything else. Go rescue an animal. I can't do it all. I'm up to my neck now. The good news is all five get along, which is
Yeah.
amazing. But they don't fight or anything like that. The dogs love play fighting. Oh my God. Um, but yeah, it's been really good. But it's like a little zoo here. Feeding time is always fun. But I've got that mastered down too, so it's good. They're all happy, so I'm happy too. But yeah, go adopt a dog. I got by the way. if you're in the Northeast, you can go to Atticus's Legacy. If you just type that in Google or Bing, Atticus's Legacy, that's where I got both my dogs from. They rescue dogs in Texas that usually are on the Mexico-Texas border, and in Texas has a really bad shelter situation. They euthanize most of the animals. These teams, they go in to the pounds and they rescue the animals that are most likely that could be adopted. They save the puppies, but they'll also take the mother. So my first dog is the mother. Her puppies were saved, and we took the mom, and because she's only like 1 or 2 years old. Um, this guy Henry, he's a puppy, so I think it was his mom got caught up in the pound system and was going to be euthanized, but then had the puppies and they saved them. So what they do is they get the dogs, then they go to fosters who then take care of the animal and they try to adopt them out, and then they bring a lot of them up north into the Northeast, where they get adopted and saved and all that. And what's cool is like when you go, I mentioned this before, when you go through a foster, like what you're getting, because you can ask them questions, their personality, and do they have any issues. They're full medically checked and vaccinated and all that kind of stuff. But it's not like going to a pound where you're taking a risk on the dog. They don't. You get to go see the dog and try it out, and I recommend that too, right? But with the fosters, it's a little bit, you know exactly what you're getting, and yeah, and they're really good at what they do, and there's just so many dogs that need saving, and it's just a terrible situation what they do. They treat animals a little bit differently in the South, not as nicely as we do in the North, which is unfortunate. But go save an animal, do it for me. If not, and if you can't, just donate money. Go to Atticus's Legacy and just give them a donation of $5 or $10, because it helps them feed those dogs and get them the medical treatment that they need. That's really good stuff. So, on that note, you can we'll start to do Q&A with the audience if there are any, but otherwise we'll end the podcast here. You can follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino. Follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN, and we're also both on Threads at the same address. We record this every Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. You're free to join us on our YouTube channel. Otherwise, you'll have to tune in to us next week. As always, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you later. Take care, everyone. Wow, almost 2 hours.
Yep.
Whose fault was that? Oh.
I think we both had a fair share of talking in that episode, to be honest. A few people asking in the chat about the Pixel Fold and what my thoughts are on it versus the Surface Duo. I think I prefer the Surface Duo 2's hardware. Like, I just like that form factor a lot. But there's a lot more to the Pixel Fold that makes it sort of stand above the Surface Duo. The software being one of them, like the fluidity of the software, the AI capabilities of Google's Android is just above and beyond versus what Microsoft was doing on the Surface Duo, which was at best buggy. And there's no AI in it at all, and it kind of just like not very fluid either. If I remember, like the Duo 2 was just, there wasn't many animations and stuff, whereas this is just like fluid central. Cameras on it are just so much better than the Surface Duos as well. Overall, it's a better phone than the Surface Duo 2, but I still like the design of the Surface Duo 2 over this more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's just something about the Duo's design that just stands out to me.
It's so elegant.
Yeah.
And just, it's such nice hardware.
Is 25967 gallium or germanium? Germanium. I don't know. I'm not gonna. So when was it compiled? If it was compiled in October, it's germanium. If it was compiled in September, it's gallium. That's, I think, how it works. I'm trying to find out if gallium got a release fork, because I don't know if it did. That's not unusual. I don't think. I think there have been semesters that don't get a release fork, but I'm trying to find out. Do you prefer dual screen or folding? Sorry, go on, Dan.
No, it's all right. You can answer that first.
I prefer dual screen. I think I always will prefer dual screen. Because Android still isn't in a place where Android's still not great tablet apps. Foldables. Some of them are, like for WhatsApp and Telegram are actually really good on the foldable screen. Those are the only ones. Everything else is rubbish. And as a result, I use the
Spotify.
outside screen. Spotify is good as well. Everything, but as a result of that, I use the outside screen way more than the inside screen because I don't want to use tablet apps on Android because they're not good. I'd rather use two apps side by side.
Yep. Agree with you there. I really want to hear your take on this. The new Outlook web wrapper is now the default experience, which is a downgrade over previous native mail app on everything but a couple of features. Meanwhile, they kept the Mac version that is super fast, native to the OS with matching UI, fully featured, etc. What the hell? Getting Windows Phone vibes with those moves. I'm pretty sure the Mac version is going to be retired.
Yeah, it is.
For
They
the
will
same
replace it with the
versions.
web. Yep, it will
Yeah,
be cross-platform.
so that point is moot. It's is a downgrade over previous native mail. I disagree 100%. I absolutely love the new Outlook. I think it's
So
great. It runs fast. It has way more features than a native mail. The native mail app started off really cool for Windows 8. It was a nice basic mail app. It just never went anywhere. But just for the feature set of the new one and the design of it, and it can be upgraded. It can be updated on the fly because it's web based. I love it. I think it's great. I can't.
There are some benefits to the old mail app. The first one being it's quite lightweight. It wasn't very RAM hungry at all. It was maybe 30 megabytes, something like that. Very light. It also launched really fast because it was a UWP app. But you're right, there's trade-off. The new Outlook has way more features, but it is slower to launch, and it also doesn't run in the background when you close it versus Mail app, which did. When you close Mail, you would still get notifications coming in, whereas the new Outlook currently doesn't do that, although I believe, to my knowledge, they are working on bringing that over. But it is trade-off, and unfortunately, the Outlook app has won because the Mail app is going away. That will be retired at the end of next year. And Outlook will replace it full time then. So you just need to get used to it because that is what Microsoft is now using as the Mail app on Windows, and they will be using it on Mac OS, and they'll be using it on the web as well. I don't know about Android and iOS. It's technically on there. The Outlook Lite is using the same backend or the backbone as this new web client on Windows and Mac. But I don't know if they plan to replace the actual Outlook apps on Android and iOS with it. There are alternatives. Thunderbird is one of them. Newton is another one. Spark, I think, is one as well. There are lots of Windows email clients these days that you can use if you don't like the new Outlook. But yes. Windows 365 for consumers news. Will it be compatible with Surface Duo like on the ThinkPhone? I would stop hoping for anything coming to the Surface Duo. That is a dead end for Microsoft, to my knowledge. I don't think they're going to update it with new features going forward. So the answer is no. But Windows 365 for consumers is coming. I don't know when. Microsoft hasn't officially announced it, but that is a thing they are working on. And to my knowledge, I think it's coming next year. I tried to use the new Outlook last night. It was terrible for tablet use on my Surface Go. Switched back to Mail. Does the new Outlook have a tablet-friendly version? Right now, no. But to my knowledge, it's something Microsoft is aware of and are hopefully working to improve. Keep in mind, the new Outlook has not yet replaced Mail and Calendar. Mail and Calendar still ship in Windows, and they are still there. Outlook is now an additional app that you can use in Windows if you want to, but it's not there. It's not default yet. That's not until the end of next year, which is probably with Windows 12, I imagine. And the new Outlook is still missing a lot of power features of the old desktop Outlook. That's true, and I don't think Microsoft plans to address that. I think Microsoft is basically cutting its ties with all of those legacy power user features. They're kind of just saying, nope, don't care. We're not adding it. Goodbye. Because desktop Outlook it's a lot. I don't use desktop Outlook because it's too much for me.
Oh yeah, it's overkill.
Yeah.
Way overkill. It's something like looking at the ribbon for Word.
Yeah, just collapse it. That's
like
what I do.
hide. Yeah, I don't need any of that stuff. Thank you. I need bold, italic, text size. That's about it.
Thoughts on the Pixel Watch 2? I was hoping for more. I was hoping for better battery life. The battery life on the Pixel Watch 1 is abysmal. But I don't think there's much improvement there. I know they say 24 hours for always on display now. I don't use always on display, so I'm hoping that translates to 2 days. But I've not pre-ordered one. I'm not really interested, to be honest. Do you think Surface Laptop 6 will be released in the spring 2024 or fall 2024? I don't know. I know there is another Surface Laptop coming next spring. I don't know if it's Surface Laptop 6 or a refreshed Surface Laptop 5 for commercial customers. I've been hearing conflicting information about the plan for next year. We'll talk about it more when I actually have a better idea. But I think there are two Surface Laptops coming next year. There is a commercial release, and then there's a separate consumer release. The consumer release, of course, will be the one that's more interesting. But I don't know for sure yet, so I'm trying to figure out what the plan is there. But I think spring 2024, or at least summer 2024, is likely for new Surface hardware.
Thoughts on Pixel Watch 2? Did you cover that?
Yeah, I just answered that.
Okay. I was going to say, I didn't pay attention at all to that event.
The new phones look great. The Pixel 8 Pro in blue looks nice. I like the look of that phone.
Looks nice.
But it doesn't fold, so I don't care.
Yeah. It's although I wouldn't mind trading in my old Pixel, but I guess the trade-ins.
See, well, I am gutted. So I traded in my iPhone 14 Plus for an iPhone 15 Plus, and Apple gave me £450 for that. I looked today on Google's website what I would have got for the iPhone 14 Plus if I traded that in. They would have given me £650. Oh, I'm so gutted. What a mistake. Right. Someone was asking here,
I can't believe, wait, hold on. I still can't believe they're charging $1,000 though for the Pixel 8 Pro.
Yeah, but I mean, that is their top end versus like the iPhone and the Samsung, which they're. I know,
but but the value just is starting to go down.
7 years of support.
Yeah,
they promise.
I mean, that's better for the resale market than for.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're somebody who drops $1,000 on a phone and you intend to utilize all 7 years, I think that actually ends up being more cost effective for you versus buying an $1,000 iPhone or $1,000 Samsung.
It's maybe with the Pixel 8 is now $699, whereas $599 before. Like the $599 price tag was absurd before. That's why it was such a good deal. Now it's $699. It's like, well, yeah.
I like what Google's doing with Pixel. I like Pixel a lot. I really do like their hardware and their software stuff, the AI stuff anyway. But yeah, anyway, someone in the chat is asking, do you think that it's a lost opportunity for Microsoft to leave the mobile phone industry to increase Bing AI usage? Google's increasing bar usage by adding it to Pixel. Jez wrote we should have talked about this on the podcast. Jez wrote a good editorial this week talking a bit about this. He sort of believes that Microsoft's AI will not be the AI to revolutionize the world because there's no phone. And I kind of think he's right. Obviously, there's Windows and there's desktop PC usage, and there is a market there for that in that way. But in regards to personal usage of AI outside of work and productivity workflows, Microsoft doesn't have a chance. And I think he's right. Bard and what Google's doing on the Pixel, most people just use whatever's default on their phone, right? So no one's going to go and download Bing AI to utilize Bing Chat on their phone. They're going to use Google Assistant if that's what their phone came with. And so in that regard, Microsoft can't compete, and that's just the end of that. Does Microsoft care? I don't think so. I think they're happy to be the leader in AI in the productivity workspace. They're not too bothered about it being something that you use for personal gain. Unless Microsoft surprises us with a new Windows phone next year, which I don't know if that would actually happen. But if Microsoft is serious about its AI efforts, I think they should certainly consider it.
I will say the trade-in stuff. Sorry, I'm looking at the Pixel 8 Pro still. If I traded my S23 Ultra, it'll give me $650, just probably a lot less than I could get. But they do give you an option of a free Pixel Watch 2 or free Pixel Buds Pro.
Yeah.
So that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah. See, I'm surprised.
I don't know which one I would take.
They don't let you trade in your Pixel Fold for Pixel 8 Pro. They should just be like, hey, we'll take your Pixel Fold and we'll give you a Pixel 8 Pro for free. That should be the trade-in. So you're paying 7 years of support, which they could cancel at any time. Yeah, I've seen this a lot. So apparently Google, I didn't realize this. Maybe I should have. But Google, I think, has a worse reputation than Microsoft when it comes to trust.
Yeah.
I thought Microsoft's reputation when it comes to trust was bad, but people just don't believe Google when they say 7 years of support. But they said 7 years of support, and everyone on Twitter was like, I just don't believe them. I reckon they'll cancel it in 5 years. Which I just think is wild that instantly people just don't believe Google will support their phone for 7 years because they said they would. You know, you're right. Google kills a lot of things. And I know they just recently killed the Pixel Pass, which was a thing that they launched 2 years ago, which every 2 years they'd give you a new phone if you pay a monthly subscription. And then they cancelled it 22 months into 24 months when the new phone was supposed to come out. So that's funny. But I think it's different for support cycles. Isn't that like technically a binding contract? If they were to... I don't know, you need to read the terms and conditions, I guess. But if they were to cancel that, surely there's, you know, some sort of lawsuit that could be filed. I don't know. Right. Last call for questions. If there are any more questions, put them in the chat now. Otherwise, forever hold your peace. I like Windows 11, but my 84-year-old mum got used to Windows 10's live tiles. Are there UI shells that can simulate this? There's an app by Stardock called Starts 11, I think it is, which I think can bring back live tiles or at least simulate the square boxes of live tiles. Look it up. Stardock.com, I think, is the website. Or just Google or Bing Stardock if you can't find the website. That is the risk, but we do have 8+ years of Google trying to do something in the mobile market. That's true as well. Unlike Surface for Microsoft, Pixel seems to be a business that Google wants to make. They are happy. You know, I think Pixel moves millions of units a year. So I think internally at Google it's kind of a little bit successful versus Surface, which probably isn't as successful. Yeah, I don't think Pixel's going away. I think they'll do a Pixel 9 and a Pixel 10. I think they're going to keep doing it. It makes sense for Google to keep doing it, I think, because it is their showcase for AI, right? It showcases Google servers, it showcases their AI expertise, showcases their camera chops, it showcases everything. More AI for the next build event. I think you'll hear more about AI at Ignite in November, which is next month. But yes, next build will probably be more AI as well.
Should I get the Pixel Watch 2 or the Buds?
Pixel Watch 2. No, you're not going to use a Pixel Watch because
I know, that's
like
the whole thing, right? It's like, but why? Yeah, exactly. But
so what you do is you get the Pixel Watch 2 and you sell it. You get that money back.
Yeah.
Would you use the Pixel Buds? I have the original Pixel Buds.
I've never had them.
I really like these. They're nice. They're nice. These ones are.
Well, the thing is that.
So go on.
I was just gonna say I have the Bose earbuds, which I think are probably better, but
probably. Yeah.
So I don't know.
All right, I think you should buy a Pixel Fold. That's what you should do.
Yeah, I'm not buying the Pixel Fold.
All right. With that, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back next week. Follow us on Twitter. Keep you updated on Twitter when we go live. But until then, are we allowed to call it Twitter? Or, I feel like that's not a thing anymore.
Called Twitter.
Yeah, I know, but I'm worried that there's like a legal ramification if they catch you. Like,
there's no legal ramification. What are you talking about? You could call it that trash social network.
Trash social, yeah, no, that's fair. Because I've just seen lots of media outlets like X and then in brackets formerly Twitter. Just call it Twitter.
Yeah, they're just doing that. They're just doing that to ease in people. We had a discussion about that. A senior editorial that was like,
oh really?
That the tech audience probably gets that X is already.
Yeah.
So that's probably not a big deal, but yeah. So.
All right. See you guys later. We'll be back next week. Goodbye.